Morning, councillors. Welcome. It's great to have you here for our council agenda, which is reasonably full for today, Tuesday, the 29th of October. Just work through our normal procedures to get our meeting underway. Health and safety matters. We know what we will need to do in the need to evacuate the building, but follow the little green man, either the door that you entered or to my left, and the assembly point is over by the St. John's in the car park. Thank you. We do have a leave of absence that has previously been granted for Councillor Robbie Brewerton, but I've received apologies today from Councillor Vanessa McPherson and Councillor Fiona Harris. Can I have a move and a seconder that we receive those? Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Vince. All in agreement with that, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. Thank you. As we do all of our council agendas, we start our meeting with our affirmation. This really does give us a chance to consider what's in front of us today and consider the district that we are representing. We pledge that we will faithfully and impartially use our skills, wisdom and judgment throughout the throughout the discussions and deliberations ahead of us today, in order to make responsible and appropriate decisions for the benefit of Hiranui District at large. We commit individually and as council to the principles of integrity and respect, and to upholding the values that we believe distinguish and enrich our district. Thank you. Councillors, you've all come prepared today and read through the decision, the discussion and the information items on our agendas. Do any of you have any conflict of interest declarations in regard to those agenda items? No, that's great. Thanks very much indeed. And Graham, we have a recording device as normal, and that will be being live streamed.
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Thanks very much indeed. Councillors, just need to alert you to, and I know that you will have received and seen the email from Graham over the weekend, just to ensure that you have a clear understanding of the items on the agenda, but Graham might be able to give us a little bit better description of what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's in my email, just on the order paper of the original agenda that sent out. Items 5.3 and 5.4 around the other way to how they were in the actual body of the agenda. So we had. The way it should be is item 5.3 will be Maskell's Road 7, item 5.4 will be council representatives on secondary school achievers bill. So I've updated the one that I re-emailed on the web, but on your hard copies, you just need to make changes.
Okay. So the correct copy is on the website for public viewing, and you will understand the slight amendment to normally spotless manner that he attends to our agendas. So thank you, Graham, for that. You're comfortable to move on? Yes. Thank you, councillors. We will now turn to page 4, and we've got a few lots of minutes to get through. The first minute that we're looking at is the agenda that was on the 24th of September, or the meeting that was held on the 24th of September. I'll just flick through as we normally do to consider any alterations or corrections to those minutes. So just looking at page 4 and 5, page 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. Well done, Graham. Looks like we have silence in the room, so that means that you've all read through those minutes and you haven't noted any corrections. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Gary. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Tom. All in agreement that those minutes are taken as true and accurate, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Those carried. Thank you. Just as we normally do, councillors will just work through those pages. If you've got matters arising that you would like to follow through, we'll take those as we go on the page turn. So page 4 and 5, page 6 and 7. Just on page 7, it talked, I think Councillor Tom asked about the election dates and milestones. I note at the zone committee last week that Susan, our CE, and Sam as chair talked about that LGNZ will be providing an info pack, and that will be coming relatively soon. So I just thought councillors probably just keep an eye on that, and that information will come to you all, I'll be thinking. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just back on page 5. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just in regards to the great walk that Councillor Brereton had asked about in matters arising. Just wondering if there was any further action on that.
I certainly haven't got anything more. Have you got anything?
I've got a letter drafted, but I haven't sent it yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll get that. Thanks, Pauline. That's great. So we'll hop over to page 8 and 9. 10 and 11, page 12 and 13. Just on page 13, Hamish, I guess that's a question for you or your staff. Vanessa brought up about social housing and agreed that officers to add a workshop. So do we have a workshop plan for that? I just don't.
We haven't programmed it yet. Because we need to get together the basic information.
Right.
Councillors will look at and consider.
So we haven't lost sight of it, that's my question. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Happy with that. Thanks, councillors. Page 13 and page 14 and page 15 is our final. So no matters arising other than those that we've spoken about. Thanks, councillors. I will take us through to page 16 of your agenda, our second set of minutes, which is our presentation meeting that was scheduled on the 1st of October. Just looking for accuracy on page 16 and 17, 18 and 19. And just the one thing on page 20, Graham, final paragraph, Kerry Pring. I just note that her name is spelled, it should have an I think. Yeah, so we'll just slight correction for that, thank you. And page 20 and 21. No other corrections to those minutes. Someone like to move? Thank you, Karen. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Tom, that we receive those minutes as true and accurate. All in agreement, please say aye. Against?
Can I
Karen.
abstain, please, because I was absent.
Yeah, we'll note that, thank you. Thank you. And matters arising. I guess it's just in regard to the FENS presentation. We sent a letter to Dears Irvine considering I guess what they presented to us from a fire emergency perspective and the willingness from, you know, for us to work with them or them to work with us if and when the need arises. So that letter went quite soon after the meeting, Graham, can you remember?
Yes, ma'am, yeah, and we've received a response from Des, and there's a couple of things to follow up in terms of sort of better communications and using our platforms to promote their messages that we want to get through.
Great, so that's tightened that circle up, which is really helpful. Thank you, everybody. So there's no further, well, we're all sort of there, aren't we? So now we're looking at the minutes. I guess I'm looking at Pauline and Robbie's not here, so just looking at the temporary road closure meeting for Tuesday the 24th of September. Pauline, I'm sure that you've read through those minutes. Are you happy to move? And I would second that those minutes be taken as true and accurate.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we're moving the few, all in agreement with that, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. And our next lot of minutes, sorry, is on page 24 in your agenda, and this was held last week, and councillors, so we have Vince and Ross sat on that temporary road closure. So I'm asking you both if you've read through those to find, do you note any matters of accuracy in those minutes, Vince or Ross?
All good.
All good. Someone like to move? Would you like to move, Ross? Happy to second this, that those minutes be taken as a true and accurate record.
Yeah.
Got that, all agree with that, please say aye. You. And is there any matters arising? I mean, some of those temporary road closures were well in advance, so some of those events haven't taken place yet. So yeah, question?
Oh, yeah, it's just, it was an interesting meeting we had on one, because there was one rally there at Silver Fern, which is quite a large rally, and we actually talked about our bond, and we felt it wasn't high enough to cover the kilometres of road that is involved. And we are one of the last councils in the country that still allows use our gravel, rallies to use our gravel roads. And just with the cost of maintaining their roads now, we've looked to the rally that we're increasing the bond.
That's right. So this was in the minutes. Are you or Dan aware Raymond's had the conversation? We increased the bond from 7,500 to 13,500. That was at the request of the subcommittee to consider exactly what Vince is talking about. Do you know if Raymond's had that conversation and where that's at?
Yes, me and Raymond did have the conversation with the organisers of that event. The organiser indicated that they were happy to consider that, go back to the committee and
Right, so we haven't got a definite answer yet.
no,
Okay.
that didn't appear to be particularly problematic.
Okay, so that was good. That was an interesting discussion. I think that the road closure, temporary road closure meeting held, considering the impact in maintaining the integrity of our roads and some of the costs associated to that. So, okay, so if there's no other matters arising, I think we'll move on from this.
Yeah.
Happy? Thank you. So councillors, we'll whip through the next few pages. The Forward Works program, I guess this will continue to get populated. The end of year is sneaking around on us really quickly. There's nothing else that you're aware of, Hamish, that might go into that between now and then. Thank you.
Just sorry, if I may.
Yeah.
Just with regard to the scheduled meetings there that are showing, can I just clarify, there's no meeting planned for November 12th? I'm likely to be absent on the 12th.
November 12 is strategy. isn't it?
Strategy. and
Okay, so
community.
that
Yeah.
my absence.
And I believe there was a workshop planned here, but don't quote me.
Madam Mayor, I think, yeah, there was a full council workshop after.
Yes.
Is that I may be an apology.
Okay, so will you?
I'll apply through an email.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I'm away on that day, but if Graham knows who is running the workshop. Thank you. On page 31 is the Mayor's Diary. The only slight alteration on page 32, the Glenmark on the 17th of October, Glenmark Community Committee ran by Zoom. I actually attended that in person, but other than that, that meeting diary is correct. Thank you. And the council working groups, I'm not aware of any updates on that. Do you know of any, or Judith, have you got any updates?
Just in terms of Soldiers Block, the steel is now going into the big steel portals. With the fire on Southern Block, there's been a effort to make sure we get sprinklers working in the Soldiers Block. And there's some challenges though with the old sewer and the old water system and just working through that. The building is alarmed and has been now for about 3 weeks. In the workshop on the 12th is to work through Soldiers Block, but more of a detailed update and the formation of the trust. So that's the workshop on the 12th. So progress is moving along.
Good, that's great. Happy with that, councillors? Any questions? Well done. It's great to hear, you know, the security around sprinklers and or alarms, you know, in this day and age. I think that's good. Well done. Thank you. Okay, councillors, happy to move forward. We have got aiming to break the morning tea at 10:15. But we can, with your indulgence, just look at our first of our decision items. Jason, if you want to help us and talk through this paper, which is the additional projects to be added to the 24-25 year, if you can take us through that, and we will question where there needs to be questioned, and then we'll work through. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and I think I may have referred to this when we've gone through the financial report. There were just a couple of projects that weren't on our carry forward list that just need to be allowed for. The key one being the Amberley Beach foreshore protection. Now, in the April meeting of council, we approved the use of debt funding with, for the costs associated with the renourishment of the bund. And the total budget that we had allowed for, which we had forecast as part of the long-term plan development, was 750,000, and with the funding coming from their existing fund as well as the Amberley Beach Reserve Fund, and if there was debt that resulted from that, that would be put against the Foreshore Protection Fund, with that being repaid over the next 10 years. And there was an increased rate to account for that. So when we had gone through the initial assessment of the carry forward projects, because that one wasn't specifically budgeted for as part of the previous scenic plan, that just missed the cut. So it was just trying to make sure that that's allowed for. Now, when the work's done, we're able to compare apples against what we approved in April. And the other project on top of page 35 is that the Hammer Springs Community Board have traditionally funded about $25,000 for street lighting, and unwritten intention that unspent money is carried forward as it had been in the previous year. And again, that was just missed when we did the initial assessment, and certainly the community board expressed the desire that the balance that had built up amounting to 50,000 be carried forward to do complement the 25,000 budgeted for this year to do approximately $75,000 worth of work in the forthcoming year. So the process is obviously just to, if there is agreement that both of those projects are just formally approved, and then we include it essentially as part of our amended budget moving forward. So when we're monitoring the financial performance, we're able to compare the actual costs against the revised budget.
Thanks, Jason. I guess the two projects you've talked about, then no surprises there. We anticipated and knew that, and I'm guessing the Hammer Springs lighting has been discussed and understood from a community board perspective, and equally the South Board has a shared understanding of the debt funding for that foreshore protection work. So there isn't any surprise, and the rest of us as councillors and elected members understand that. So I'm not sure, is there any question of clarity from those projects carried forward for the 24-25 year that councillors that you have need to question Jason around? Yep.
So, sorry, Madam Mayor, just regarding that Amberley Beach and foreshore fund, it's been delayed. That's the last financial year. So presumably it will happen this financial year. I mean, because we're not driving it, it's being driven by the community.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
There's a paper in the agenda referring to this matter.
So that's in the information item, and it's referring to the same parcel of work.
Okay.
Yeah. And also you've probably noted at 1 o'clock we have got a deputation from the Amberley Beach Residents Association.
Okay.
And I'm guessing they're just wanting to update us from that perspective of where things are at. So we willingly receive that information at 1 o'clock and was here, but she will no doubt be here at 1 o'clock as well. So, yeah, so that sort of ties that in. So does that clarify in your
Yeah.
mind, Ross? Are you happy with that? Is there nothing else you need to add to that? No. Councillors, are you happy with that, from that decision capacity? We do have a recommendation which outlines just what we've heard from Jason and what we've read in preparation for today's meeting. And if you are of the mind to move that recommendation, I'll be happy to receive that now. Thank you, Karen. That's awesome. Thank you, Karen. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Tom. If there's no further questions around that, I'm going to put that motion. All in agreement to that, please say aye. Aye. Those against? That motion's carried. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that. Right, councillors, that takes us through to our next decision item, which is on page 36, which is seeking approval on behalf of the Minister, the licence to occupy at Port Robertson Coastal Reserve. Welcome, Evan. It's nice to have you here. I think this might be the first time you've presented to us, is it?
Yes.
It is. Welcome.
Thank you.
We look forward to you taking us through this paper. There again, these sorts of actions have been around for a wee while, but it's good to have. And I guess the important thing for us as councillors is that we're actually acting on behalf of the Minister today. So it's a council hat, but a Minister of Conservation hat that we are making this decision on. But look, Evan, I think it'd be great if you just step us through this paper, and we'll take questions if we need to clarify.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, as you rightly pointed out, maybe that's the main point to notice is on point 35 on page 39. In my summary there, I've just written the Minister and my delegation, the local authority, is not the decision maker, but has the supervisory role in ensuring that the decision was arrived at in compliance with the requirements of the Reserve Act, by considering various aspects. Okay. So the purpose of the report is for Council acting on behalf of the Minister of Conservation in terms of section 48A of the Reserves Act to consider providing consent for the Chief Executive Officer's granting of a license to net to occupy a portion of the Port Robertson Coastal Reserve to operate their communications station. And secondly, to approve the terms and conditions of the license as determined by the Chief Executive Officer, CEO. Now, my recommendation will be that Council, acting on behalf of the Minister of Conservation, consent to the Chief Executive Officer's granting of the license to Muri Net Limited to occupy a small portion of Port Robertson Coastal Reserve for purposes of the communication station, and approve terms and conditions of the license. Just as a short summary, since about 2013, Muri has been using a small section of Port Robertson Coastal Reserve, and they've had their communication system there. Section 48 of the Reserves Act permits administering bodies of reserves with the consent of the Minister to grant licenses and to determine certain conditions. The conditions must, of course, also be approved by the Minister. Council has delegated their authority to grant these licenses to the Chief Executive Officer. The Minister, on the other hand, at a later stage, has delegated their authority to grant consent and to approve the terms to local authorities who are managing body of the reserve. So, following a new application from Muri, the CEO decided, by looking at the merits of the case and considering the Reserves Act, to grant a license, and has determined certain conditions which are set in the deed of license attached. So to finalize this whole process, Council basically now just needs to provide consent and approve the terms and conditions. There are a few other aspects which I can mention, but normally most of those will be answered if there are specific questions. I can just also mention that we have run this through the Port Robinson Reserves Advisory Group. They are all in favour of this. And also, I've also taken information report to the Cheviot Community Committee last week Thursday, and they are also quite in favour of that. I've also received a phone call afterwards from one of the committee members who also confirmed that they think it's about time to get better coverage on internet down at reserve. I think that's it.
That's, I mean, I think it's a well-written report actually even, so we'll just, but I just want to acknowledge a couple of things. It's great that you spoke with the Port Robinson Advisory Group and also the Cheviot Community Committee. And I know, Vince, you know, at least the last two AGMs held on Easter Sunday, there is a lot of interest and a lot of support to get increased communications around that equitable banner. I'm sure Ross knows it as well, you know, so I'm sure that this will be a welcome opportunity, Vince, but no doubt you might want to say something as well. So well done for the work that's been done to continue with that. Want to say something?
I do.
Yeah, so if you like.
So obviously I've made the decision, and you're now wearing the hat of the Minister of Conservation, looking at that decision. And I just point you to page 56, 57, which shows the existing pole on that reserve. And then if you look at page 59, 60, you'll see what's going to replace that existing pole on that reserve. So I guess gives you some idea of the scope of what's there and what will replace it.
Okay, got a couple of questions, so thank you, Vince. We'll go to you first.
I just support this project because at the moment there isn't actually cell phone coverage into Bull Bay for even for St John's, and that it's a sort of a black spot, and just for safety really it's good to have communication into that, isn't it? So I'll move the.
Yeah, I'll come back to you to get that, but I'll just check to see if there's any other questions to clarify. Any, Tom, Peter?
Yeah, and just a very quick question. I see that it's providing service for 4G. Are they not planning to upgrade to 5G or even higher? You know, with technology moving so quickly, 4G is a little bit old hat now.
Well, I believe it's still better than what they have currently, but from my conversations with them, it seems as though they are focused on 4G at this stage. I think the population and just the requirements doesn't really support going for 5G at this stage. So it's not in the pipeline at this stage.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Hamish.
My understanding is that 4G gives you greater saturation, and 5G you require, it doesn't penetrate as fast, so you need more repeaters. So 4G often works better in a rural area than a typical 5G, and it's certainly more cost effective. I also know that the pole is a multi-use pole, so that other operators can use it. So if somebody wants to upgrade to 5G, I'm sure that there'll be space on the pole for them if it's the right sort of high pace of travel.
And we wouldn't restrict that.
Well, the pole is conditioned as per the drawing, so that we know what we're getting.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they can come back. They want to put a bigger pole in again, have another crack. But at the moment, the pole is for multi-operators.
And I mean, from an outsider attending those meetings, this will be a game changer for the things that Vince has talked about. You know, we've got ambulance officers that, and they're not available under a current system. So, you know, I mean, to give balance to the argument, though, there are also some members of the community who say actually it's nice to go to a place where you haven't got access and you haven't got any communication. So, you know, the peace and quiet, that tranquility. But, you know, I think that the need to have communication for this community going forward is probably now's the time is right with a local operator providing that. So Vince, if there's no further questions, you're happy to move the motion as written on page 36 of our report? Thank you. Do I have a second before that? Thank you, Ross. No further questions? All in agreement to that, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that motion's carried. Thanks, Evan. Well done.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good. I'm just looking at the time, Graham, and I wonder if we could perhaps spend the next 10 minutes doing 5.4, which is the council's representatives, rather than jumping into Maskell's Road. And so, councillors, if you could just turn to page 68 of your which is the council representatives of the Secondary School Achievers Assessment Panel. There's been a couple of wee changes since this report, so maybe Graham, I'll ask you to give us a bit of an overview of this report, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just speaking to this on behalf of my colleague Marie, who wrote the report, and who is our expert on this process, as you all know. So it's really just appointing 2 councillor members to the panel, and noting that who was on it last time. We've had a discussion this morning about the likely date of the meeting, which is going to be likely to be the 21st of November. And in discussions with Councillor Davies earlier, he suggested he probably couldn't make that. So we are looking for, and Councillor McPherson is also going to be unavailable.
Yes, she is. So, and that's due to Vince and Vanessa being at Rural and Provincial in Wellington on the 21st.
Yes.
So they,
Yes, so, so we are looking for 2 new members for the assessment panel. So that I probably don't need to say too much more than that. I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, that's great. So I think it's locked in for the 21st at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Yeah, so just if you can look in your diaries, and I'm happy if I can get 2 volunteers to join me on that afternoon of the 21st of November, that would be fabulous. I know you're all checking your diaries.
And Madam Mayor, I understand the ceremony is on the 10th of December. Which is yes, after the operations.
Yeah, and I'll be here. Yeah, so it'd be great if you were able to participate in that. It's a lovely celebration with our young people. So anyway, councillors, how do your diaries look? Your assessment, to sit on that assessment panel? You can?
I leave on the 11th, so 10th, so 10th. Said that when's the ceremony on 10th of December?
December, yes.
That's all right, yeah, I leave on the 11th.
So are you able to do the Thursday, the 21st, to be on that assessment panel?
Yeah, that's right, I know.
Yeah, Karen, are you nodding as well?
I'm available.
Okay, so we've got 2 councillor volunteers to join me on the 21st at 1 o'clock, and I'm guessing Marie will, I'm sure it'll be here. So, yeah, so thank you. Thanks. So if I could move that we appoint Councillor Karen Armstrong and Dave Hislop to the Secondary School Achievers Assessment Panel. Happy to move that. Do I have a second? Thank you, Pauline. In no further comment around that, all in agreement, please say aye. Aye. That's carried, thank you. If you are able to make the 10th of December, it's a lovely celebration, particularly for the families that the young people have fortunate. I mean, last year, I think, Karen, you sat on that committee as well. There was a lot of we had significant applications and really hard decisions to make, and I suspect that we're no different this year, so that's great, thank you. I think that we might break for morning tea now. I know it's earlier than planned. We're supposed to be at 10:15 because we've got staff that we're welcoming in. So I'm not sure whether staff are available, but I just think the Maskell's Road decision is probably.
We can go on to a couple of information reports, Madam.
Okay.
Mayor. There's the Lagoima one and the performance reporting.
Alrighty.
It'd be helpful getting those out of the way now.
Okay. How wise. I don't want to jump around too much to see.
The one was on 1, 2, 3, page 1, 2, 3.
Okay, good stuff. Radio councillors, page 122, and we have got our information, our Lagoima request information paper. Thank you, Graham. You might want to talk us through that one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the table is on page 123. There's one outstanding there, number 3, but the Chief Financial Officer is dealing with the request on that just because of the extra work. And there's one still in progress on the council policy and workshop. That's just a question about how this council is responding to the the Ombudsman's report on workshops. So we just answer that. But otherwise, I'm happy to take questions.
Right, thank you. Questions from councillors? On page, probably on page 123 in your report. Happy with that? If that's the case, is someone happy to move that we receive that information? Thank you, Gary. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Karen. All in agreement with that, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Hamish, would you like to do your monthly performance report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we're on page 125. Just focusing on the red areas, obviously on page 125, the rubbish and recycling ratio, 30% for the month when the target is greater than 31%. We had good volumes of recycling, but also had large waste volumes for the month. We're not sure what the drivers there are, but that is what has happened. And just over the page, noting that for September, 100% of building consents were on time. So we're never going to get back to 100% on a cumulative, but or we might around. I think we look to be well on track there. And at this point, I would also just mention that we have had our audit of our building consent authority and achieved a really good result with that audit. So we are back to 2-year audits on those. Dan, do you have any further comments on that? Good bit of work by the team there, particularly Adele and Jennifer, have done a lot of work to make sure that we are fully compliant with this, and Kerry as well. So as well as the whole building team, and yeah, particularly those three.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Someone like to move that we receive that information? Pauline, thank you, Vince. All in agreement with that we receive that information, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Thank you. Sorry if I just jump around a wee bit here.
Carry on with the
Okay. Yeah, okay, you do that, and then maybe Karen, would you like to do the audit and risk? And the owners, we'll do this one first and then we'll come to you, thank you.
So I'll take that Paul's paper as read, noting that as public excluded, there will be a discussion of the trends and updates that council requested.
Right, thank you. I would like to move that we receive it. Thank you, Tom. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Dave. All in agreement with that, please say aye. Aye. Great, that's carried. Thank you. How are you feeling, Karen? I know that's a bit of a jump. Maybe shall we do the ops one and then that gives a wee bit of time? Would that be okay? Thanks. Thank you. I know it's so tough one. Ross, can we just do the operations committee update,
Yep.
please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'll take it as read, but the few highlights I pointed out, which is, obviously the Mescals Road paper is coming to us today, and it'll be good to, have a conclusion to that. If you can, that'd be great. On the customer services, I think it's great to see that we've, 15 compliments, which is great. We run a business and to be honest, the negative ones, if you have one of them to 20 good ones, you're probably doing pretty well. And but it tends the negative ones that stack in your mind. So it's great to have positive feedback, and you need to pin them on the wall because the negative ones do always tend to be the ones that do stick. Under Three Waters, the Haraloo #1 plant, that's a great achievement there. Commission, and whether that's still in the process of, I know it's a long process to commission a plant like that, so we'll still. Under roading, I think the highlight there, the amount of metal that's been put on the roads under the dry conditions is great. Just see the amount of metal on the road. Great achievement there. Regulatory, just making a note that little community of Colvin, there's an application for a bottle store going to Colvin. I know it just goes through the process, but yeah, it's possibly something that I feel that it's, we don't need another bottle store, but we'll see how that works through the process. Comes out the other side, there is a process to it, so. And that is my report. Are there any questions?
Cool, thanks Ross. Any questions for Ross? Thank you. Do you want to move, Ross?
I will move.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Gary. All in agreement, please say aye. Gary, thank you. Perhaps Pauline and your strategy and community. Will do that.
Certainly. So an extraordinary strategy and community committee meeting, just because we have some bylaws in the work program. I'm going to take that as read, and I'll just note that there will be upcoming public consultation in regards to the cemeteries bylaw and the livestock movement bylaw. If there's any questions, I'm happy to respond to those.
Thank you, Pauline. That's fantastic. Is there any no questions? You're happy to move?
I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Tom. All in agreement with that, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Karen.
Just mentioning there, as you see, the Ordnance Risk Committee update. I think the committee will really gratified to hear about the NZTA procedural audit review. As people in the Ops Committee, and probably all of you are aware, this is off the back of a previous unsatisfactory report, and it was really pleasing to know tremendous, I think, turnaround really is the right word. And officers have clearly been working very hard to address a number of things, and as you'll see there, only the overall rating was some improvement needed, but only 4 recommendations are provided, 3 of which had already been resolved and 1 partially satisfied. So that was really, really good. I'm sure the Ops Committee will be well familiar with all of that anyway. And I think the other thing that we've been sort of refining the health and safety report over time, and we have now been receiving reports that are sort of roll over 12-month comparative each time, which is giving us a much better picture of trends and issues that may arise, and so that's been really helpful. I feel like I've got a much clearer line of sight over that, and you'll see there that the leadership team have undertaken drug and alcohol training and are in the process of investigation training, and that just helps support internal processes when matters are reported. Happy to take all questions, and if there are none, happy to move.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. That was a great update on the fly, so I really appreciate that. Is there any questions for Karen or Gary or myself to sit on that? Second, so we're going to move on a second that we received that information. All in agreement to that, please say aye. Aye. Those against, that's carried. Wow, team, that was pretty awesome. Thank you. Now I think we might break the warm tea. Thank you and welcome. We've got some people, some guests coming in. Well, why not? Why not? Welcome, everybody. It's really special today to be able to acknowledge some of our staff that have given exemplary service to our community. And I look forward to hearing from their managers shortly as we hear of the skills and wisdom and the confidence in the roles that they do play within our community. But before I do that, I've got something special here, and actually nobody knows this is going to happen. Vince is probably sitting there thinking, hang on, how come Faye's arrived down here? She's not a lot, she's not part of the staff, but she might think she is sometimes actually. But Vince, I want you to come forward because I have a certificate here to acknowledge your 20 years of service as an elected member to the Hurunui District Council. And I just think you all need to understand, and we've got a few words here, Vince, so you know, you're not allowed to take me out if I'm wrong. But your 20 years of service is a true testimony to your dedication to the organisation and not to mention your community. Vince became a councillor in 2004. Some of us were just babies then. Some of us. He has stood on various committees since that time. He's been chairperson to the Cheviot Board Committee, chairperson to the Water Liaison Committee, and also to the Infrastructure Committee, which we would now call Operations. He has been a committee member of the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, the Public Services and Regulatory, which is now Strategy and Community, Cheviot Community Committee since 2019 until today, and beyond today actually, Vince. Zone Committee back in 2013 until it's we closed that one off in July 2021. Of course, Vince is in his second term as Deputy Mayor. No surprise what I'm going to say now, Vince. Oh, look, we've got Next Generation coming. Welcome, Josh, come in.
Okay.
Find a seat. Oh, we've got a wee Vince there. Yeah. A little Vince. Yeah, cool. But for those of us sitting at the table with our colleague Vince, he demonstrates an absolute focus on his local area and its constituents, backed up by his dedicated and long-standing connections, professionally and personally, with so many from all walks of life. He gives total commitment. We all know where the Jed River is. we all know about that, Jed, and it's pretty cool. He gives total commitment to the role, including much of his personal time with the residents of Cheviot as required. He's dedicated to local committees and their causes and to council meetings, even when there has been times when you've had the odd health issue that you've had to go and get, sorted out, so good for you. But regardless of all of that, community remains front and centre of your focus, Vince. Your strong local support is evidenced by your success at 7 consecutive local government elections. At the council table, we all know Vince displays a close focus to detail, setting an example for many of us who on many occasions become sidetracked by a bigger picture or other matters. But Vince keeps us on track, and we believe, Vince, that you are entitled to a certificate to say you've done your 20 years. Yeah, that doesn't count.
Oh, thanks, guys. It does seem quite a while. But there's familiar faces have been here as long as Anne.
Yeah, so it's nice to have Faye, and you've got Lindsay and Anne here as well, and of course Josh and Lauren and Young.
Gavin.
Gavin, thank you. How old's Gavin? Oh, how cool is that? 3 generations. So congratulations, Vince. We thought it deserved a certificate. Thanks, Joe, for all the work you've done to kind of get this prompted me. Yeah, but 20 years is worthy recognition. Well done.
Thank you, a bit of a surprise.
I'm going to have smoke on one. Well, that's great. So can I now ask the managers, I think Naomi, are you coming forward? We've got other special certificates to acknowledge as well from a staffing perspective, and I just think it's really special for those of you receiving certificates today. You know, it's a number of years that you have been with this organisation, and I just think that's testimony to the integrity that you bring to your roles, but actually what you do as a service to our community as well. So thanks, Nairi. I know Naomi's going to say something special.
Oh, pressure.
Yes, you are.
And I'm stepping in for Mark, who's swanning off in Adelaide somewhere. So, yeah, so special words come from Mark, but thank you. So I'm introducing you today to Nairi, and I think there's no introduction needed really, as Nairi is well known to pretty much everyone around here, given that she's been with us for 25 years. Nairi actually started with us last century. So, and when you look around the office and you see some of our younger members of staff, they actually weren't even born when you started. Yeah, so so Nairi went to university and she studied there and became a cataloguer at Christchurch Public Libraries. And from there, she decided that libraries was where she wanted to be, and she ended up coming out from there out to Huranui. So she completed her diploma with us on her journey through there. Over the next 25 years, she had 4 children. So they were also all born while working with us, and went through Amberley School and Broomfield School, Southward, and then through to Rangiora High School. I think Oriana is still, she's the only one left at school, yeah, so. And we've seen them all come through the libraries as little ones and grow up with us as well, so that has been really, really special. In fact, when Nairi went off on maternity leave in 2005 with Willem, she had to come back early because there was a new library being built. So she was actually needed to come back to be part of the move to move into there. And Nairi said that she still thinks that building has a lovely timeless design, but it's a bit small. When we asked Nairi, or when Mark asked Nairi, what was the secret to staying here? What was the best things about still being here? And she said, no doubt, number one is her colleagues. And we've still got one of her colleagues down here with us today. And also the variety of work that no 2 days are the same. There was a note here that within a few weeks of arriving, Avril, who you'll also know, who works on the staff, was also dual working at the Court Theatre. And I'm not sure what the context is, but there was a whole lot of costumes came in from the Court Theatre. And so in the first few weeks, the cataloguer was actually dressing in Court Theatre. So quite a move for someone coming in from that area. And the last thing is that she loves change, and which is a good thing because there's been a lot of change in our libraries. So there's been over 3 different operating systems that have been implemented in that time. And one of the things that Nairi brings for us in the library systems is technology, use of technology. She's our IT guru down there. She's the one that implements everything. She's the go-to. And those savvy skills have been really, really important for our other team members. And that's, I think, where we get to with you, Nairi, that we want to thank you. And thank you for your, particularly in those areas of IT and bringing that together and supporting the whole staff with that. And now she plays a fantastic role in coaching and mentoring the new ones as they come along. So yay, thank you so much. And thank you on behalf of everyone.
Keep up the good work, another 25 years.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Do you want to say anything?
I just want to say thank you very much. I have enjoyed my time here. That's one of the reasons why I'm still here as well. And you know, as Naomi said, having great colleagues has been the key things to being able to stay. We've all got on really well over the years and the staff that have come through. And it's good to be in a place where you see change happening. You get bored doing the same thing day after day, at least in the library, where people coming in the door, there's always a new challenge every day. Keeps you active all night.
Sounds like you set up to be an elected member.
No, I'll watch my line at that one.
Do you want to say something, Vicky, or we do that another day?
No, another day.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we've got someone incredibly special that's going to receive the next award, and Michelle, I think you've got something, you want to come forward and say something pretty special about this person as well.
Pressure from you and pressure from Graham. But stand over there, Graham.
Oh, yeah, right, you won't have to go far to give him a cuddle.
Right, I'm not going to be like Naomi, I have to read.
It's fine.
Yep. So it is my pleasure to be able to acknowledge and celebrate Graham's 15 years of service and dedication to council, his colleagues and the community. I'm not certain that Graham thought he would be here to celebrate this milestone, though he did know just this week that he'd be looking forward to his 20-year celebration as well. That's what I took out of that email. Graham, you are a constant and calming force, always bringing dedication, reliability, professionalism and humour to everything you do. Your knowledge seems boundless. When you don't know, you make it up with such certainty and a she'll be right attitude, no one ever questions it. Your ability to roll with constant change and always looking for ways to improve the way in which governance is delivered is a valuable and much relied on skill and has kept the team always moving forward. Not only does council value your vast knowledge of all things governance, but I think we can safely say on behalf of the whole office that your humorous emails lighten up even the most serious issues and are much anticipated. So Graham has a way with words that takes a reader through a journey much like kayaking on a rapid river, filled with unexpected twists and turns. And he always signs off with a final dose of humour, leaving us all pondering the issue for much of the day, or for many years later, if everyone remembers the folly of Earl Grey tea. Actually, I should have got him to write the speech, and he did offer a couple of times, but we did have limited time today, and I wouldn't be able to pronounce half the words he wrote, so here it is. Now, while I could take up the rest of this meeting singing your praises and achievements, Graham, pretty sure I only had 10 minutes to speak and 5 minutes of questions clarity. So, I'd better wrap it up with the final gift from the governance team to you. One great big. Congratulations from us all, you've certainly played it blinder.
Only get a piece of paper. Well done. Good stuff. You so totally deserve that, and what a lovely speech, Michelle. Actually, Graham, I think we're really privileged to have Graham around the office. He's just there's a calming influence. You know, when I get the pickle here, he seems to untangle it. You know, always look to the left and then look to the right. To try and sort of unwind things, but you're a magnificent man to have around, and I wish you well, and I look forward to your 20-year certificate. So keep up the good work. Yeah, look, it's great. Thank you. You might want to say a few words.
Oh no, yeah, I like to think of myself as a quiet person, but once you get the opportunity, you can't shut me up.
We've got sausage rolls.
If it's the last one, we're doing a speech, you start to look at the watch.
That's right, too.
Well, first of all, PAB has played a blinder, which is what our previous boss and colleague Michael used to always go around. It's his way of saying to people that I've done a good job, played a blinder, so it's become a PAB. So we now give out PABs if someone's done a good job. So this is very meaningful to me. I did reflect a little bit on why I'm still here after 15 years. And I think as with everything, it's about the people, and you know, you've got to feel like you belong and enjoy what you're doing. And I remember when I first came here 15 years ago, I was struck by how friendly and open and relaxed this council chamber is. And I think Gary was there at the time, and I think when you came in, Gary, it was one of your focus was to make far more welcoming in this chamber. I remember I worked at one previous council where part of my job was to announce that the mayor was coming, so I had to, everyone had to stand for the mayor, and the mayor would come in with the CEO and the procession and up to the dais, and I'd be up there and we'd all be lording it over the rest of the council. And so I think it's really important that this chamber is very open and welcoming to people. And I think Winton carried it on after Karen and Murray, you've taken that to a new level as well. It's great when people come in, the council will often go and say hello to them, and it's during the break, have a cuppa, etc. And I think that's really important. And that's kind of reflected through the organisation as well. And led by the chiefs, generally a pretty friendly and open bunch, welcoming, and don't mind if we take the mickey out of them sometimes, and certainly get a lot back as well. And it flows through into the organisation. So there's a lot of really cool people in this organisation, and I kind of defy anyone to do a circuit of the office and not hear a laugh or two emanating around the office. So it's a really wonderful place to work. It's not like everyone's just having a great time and not doing any work. There's a lot of really committed people in this organisation, and public service ethic is definitely still alive and well. I think that's what drives a lot of people here, and it's really important to me. And of course, my team, I should mention, I think I've got all 5 here, the 5 good wives of governance, as I like to think of them. And I can say anything I like about them here today, because of course we've got qualified privilege in the chambers here, so there'll be no recriminations. But yes, it's the team that really kind of gets you through, and blessed to be all these female colleagues. They are like kind of long-suffering loyal partners in many ways. They laugh at my bad jokes politely. They put up with my cantankerousness on a council agenda day when I'm waiting on overdue reports. I get quite grumpy. And they put up with me when I'm kind of pontificating around the office saying I'm actually a principal governance advisor, not a senior governance advisor. So they're all there for me. Marie and Joe, here when I first arrived, provided a lot of guidance, and they've a real strong connection to your communities, and I think that's been invaluable to me for learning about the Huranui and the people I'm working for, so I've really appreciated that. Michelle, who's quickly become one of the best team leaders I've ever had, and we don't get bonuses anymore, so I'm not being a sycophant here. But she also brings a great sense of humour to the team. And our newish people, Evelyn and Natasha, have just seamlessly fitted into the team and picked up that vibe as well, and just it's a really fun and supportive environment, and bring fresh ideas. So a bit like Nairi being open to change, it's been good for our team to have new ideas coming in and challenging us, asking us why we do things. So yeah, so thank you to everyone. 20 years is the next target, and then a few years after that retirement. But it's of course if AI doesn't get me first. So. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Nice speech, I was looking at the clock. Now we're actually 3 minutes late for morning tea. But look, lovely to hear from our staff, but actually it's lovely to acknowledge as an elected member 20 years in any one organisation. And I think you wrapped it up really nicely, Graham, by talking about the values that we read our affirmation every time we have a council meeting, and that is that we bring the integrity to our roles as elected members, but actually what we also see, what I see every day and what we feel every day is the reciprocal effect of that integrity and respect from our staff and what they do for our community. And I know, it's really hard to get it right 100% of the time, but I think that we do a remarkable job to try our very best at every interaction we have with our community. And I think that's something that we need to foster and cherish, really, because it makes us who we are as sort of Huranui, really, So great to celebrate with you all, and please, lovely to have you all here as a invited guest here this morning, and we're now going to share some time with you over a morning tea, but we do have a job to do, and we've got to keep carrying on probably in about 20 minutes time. So we'll adjourn now, And we'll be back, councillors, in about 20 minutes after morning tea. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. It was a nice to lead into morning tea and recognise our long-standing staff and Vince as our elected member. It's it's a long duration of service to community. It doesn't matter whether you're an elected member or you're a staff member, actually you're serving your community, and I just think it's nice to acknowledge that. Well done, thank you. So councillors, you'll be we'll be looking at your run sheet, and we've ticked off some of our information items. So to my way of reckoning, we have got our decision item, which is 5.3, the Maskell's road ceiling. Then we have a discussion item, which is Alan will be coming in for civil defence and emergency management. And then we've got 2 information items to complete our open agenda. And the Amberley Fund at 7.1 is an information item, along with our financial report for end of September. So I think that's what we have in front of us between now and lunchtime, councillors. And then after lunch, we do have a deputation at 1 o'clock. So we'll be working, I think we'll be working quite well as far as the timing goes. So thanks, councillors. Page 61 of your report This is Dan's paper. It is a recommendation that's come to council from the operations committee of last week. And those, that report is also attached to your council agenda as well. But Dan, perhaps if you just take us through that, I guess the position as to where we are at now. And then we will have some question time and looking to agree on the result if we can for not only ourselves as our district, but also the members of our community that we're in negotiation or discussion with. So important from all counts really. So thank you, Dan. We'll listen with intent on this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I think everybody's aware of the long-standing history around this, so I'm not going to cover off all of that. But what I will say is that we had a report that was taken to the operations committee last week, and that was as a result of the June meeting of 2024. The operations committee tasked me with going to organise a meeting with the residents of Maskell's Road, and we had that in August, 27th of August, and it was in here, and everybody was sat around the table when we were talking about what the options might be. And I think it's fair to say on that night, by and large, everybody was in favour, everybody of the residents were in favour, bar two properties of a 50-50 share, and the two properties, one cited that they just moved on to the road, known as the gravel road, and they hadn't expected to see any other costs, and another one just said that they couldn't afford it. But the information from that was, like I say, primarily in support of a 50-50 share. So a report went to the operations committee last week talking about that, and my recommendation for that report was specifically that the committee committed to the unsealed roads policy, and the reason why I did that was the funding was uncertain. Now, if it comes from operational expenses, then that means that something else on the road doesn't get done. If it gets covered through debt, then we need a way of paying that debt back. And to my knowledge, at the moment, we have no plans around how we might pay that debt back. We're obviously, as officers, we're expected to follow policy unless there's a clear and obvious benefit to the entire district, and I couldn't see that. Hence the reason why I suggested following policy. We do have a range of backlogs in the roading network, namely the sealed network. I think it's widespread. Everybody knows that we should be sealing around about 37 to 40 kilometres every year. And over a number of years, we've only been sealing about 32. So we've got this backlog mounting up. Similarly with other areas, signs, not putting enough metal down on unsealed roads. It's inconsistent with the government's land transport policy statement. So therefore it would be lower down on our priority workload if we were to do the work. And what it's very unlikely to do is to attract any NZTA subsidy. If it were to attract a subsidy, that would come at the expense of our operational budgets. So that was my rationale for it, but notwithstanding that, I did note particularly on an alternative option of supporting the 50-50 is that actually supporting it does fit in with council's strategic goal of improving levels of service delivered by the road network. So it certainly does meet that threshold, and it works with communities to ensure key community infrastructure is appropriate for the future, deliver key services where funding is available and services meet the needs of communities. So that said, that was kind of the cover of the first report for last week, and I'll just also add that what I talk about in the report is an estimate, a sum of money to seal the road, and that is somewhere the range is around about engineer's estimate of 675,000 to 700. Now there is a contractor that lives on the road, and his estimate was about 400, but I don't think that he did that with the knowledge of the amount of, well, he hadn't seen the design that we've got. So, but nonetheless, the aim would be, regardless of where we think the price being, the principle behind the decision that you'll make today is about how that might be funded, what the proportionality of that funding is, and then if it's in support, we would then go out to the open market. So that's where we truly know what the value is. So coming forward to the last committee meeting, the operations committee agreed that to support a 50-50 cost share model. And that was with via a targeted rate. There are some legal implications around setting a targeted rate, but we don't think that at this stage, that if we were to set a targeted rate, it would be a significant decision under the long-term plan. Therefore, it would invoke the special consultative procedures. The cost share would be split for the residents over a 10-year period. And if 75% of the properties are in agreement, I'll come back to that point in a second. The committee also felt that it should be debt funded. But I've also added a comment in here that what we are about to do is bring a series of reports to the operations committee about, with the reduced road funding, we are looking at doing some things, I suppose, that would change levels of service. So I wanted you to be cognizant of those before you made that decision today. Now I haven't got a complete list, but it's things like, so Woodbank Road Ford, it's a concrete bottom Ford, and it's been in a state of disrepair probably for 18 months now. And we've got a range of quotes to do that work, but one of the options is to return it back to a soft bottom Ford. Now that's a level of service change that we need to bring back to the operations committee. So noxious weed spraying, roadside mowing, we're already anticipating doing a narrower seal on Hawkeswood Road. So we're already looking at, from the roading account, what can we do less of, because our budget is compressed compared to where we thought it'd be for the long term. If the work were to be debt funded, we also have used in the past the debt capacity to provide council's share of any emergency works. So you'll remember at the beginning of last year, we were at a deficit of 1.5 million, and that in the roading account, and that 1.5 million was as a result of emergency works that we've undertaken. Now, what we have done, we've worked really hard with NZTA over the last 12 months, and we've recovered that position. But it has come at the expense of the operations of not doing everything that we probably should have been doing, but to make sure that we hit the start of this year pretty much with as little debt as possible, if not any. One of the other things I will just mention is, so I'll go back to that 75% of approvals, which is what the operations committee approved. Now, I think everybody's well aware that there's 24 properties up there, the 75% threshold. That does mean that 6 properties will be essentially forced to pay a targeted rate for something that they don't want or cannot afford. So one of the things that you may consider in your decision today is to increase that percentage. So if you get something like, if it were 85% of people that were in agreement and were willing to pay, then yes, that the price goes up for the 85% that are in support, but you might then decide to waive the targeted rate for the people that are not in support. So that's something that you might want to consider. But in order to make that work, you've got to increase that that percentage of properties that do approve. So, Madam Mayor, that's pretty much my summary. I'm open to any questions really, but I think the rest of it is everybody's quite well aware of what's going on.
Thank you, Dean. Yes, you're right. I mean, this has been across this table and certainly across the operations table on several occasions, and many have sat in and participated in that public meeting that we hosted back in August that you've spoken about. And this is a significant decision that needs to be weighed up with the with all of the factors that you've outlined today, but all of the factors that we hold in our heads as well about the impact on our overall debt as a council. And I know I raised this at the operations meeting last week, you know, that is an issue that we need to consider because it's an issue that our residents, our constituents challenged us with as we went into our LTP. And so, you know, these decisions that are in front of us today, you know, naturally don't, you know, we're wanting to do the very best for our community and the issues that we understand for those residents on Maskell Road, but we also need to consider that in the entirety of our district as well. So, you know, we're all grappling with this. If it was an easy decision, we would have had it done back in July or earlier, but this is a really difficult decision because of all of those issues that you've talked about and we understand and know. So we're going in with our eyes wide open and understanding, and our job is to actually tease out as much as we can in this conversation and get a result, be it one way or the other for ourselves, but actually for these residents who have been a bit of a champion in that respect as well. So I am going to open it up for questions. I know that it might take a little bit of circular dialogue and you know, questions being asked the same question but another way, but if we can all just listen with intent to each other's questions to tease out and try and get to a point of clarity or understanding or direction other than what has been recommended or what has been recommended. So that's our job sitting in front of us, councillors. So I'm going to open it up for discussion. Thank you. Who wants to go first? Oh, no surprises there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I've just got a wee question of clarity more for Dan, just regarding the funding side of it. That because potentially there'll be no NZTA funding involved in it. So my understanding is that then we're not bound by the fish hooks that potentially come within NZTA. So we could go out to the open market, get 3 tenders and make the decisions ourselves without any obligation to NZTA. That's sort of how I'm reading it, and yeah, it gives us a bit more freedom then on that side of it. Is that fair?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, that's correct. Yeah.
Can I just tease that out a little bit more from our own perspective though? The scope of practice and we're still looking to get
a quality job.
Yeah, that's right. A job that's up to specification and has got the durability to last for 10 years or 20 years or whatever a life of the sealed network would be. So whilst we might not have the fish hooks that you've talked about, we actually still need to be certain that we're getting a confident, robust specification and job.
Job done.
Yeah. So that way, as you see that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, the road will be built as per any other road in the district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think we need to clear that up, because if it's, you know, we've got members of our community listening that take out parts of a conversation, I think we need to be really clear about the story that we're telling, I guess, rather than making an assumption.
The road will be constructed to the Oz Roads or the TNZ specification.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, Ross. So any other questions? So I've got Pauline and then Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Murray, I'm just going to preface, I guess, by saying thank you for articulating that difficulty in decision making with that balance between considering this particular group of people and their needs and wants and the whole district. It is tricky. And I attended that meeting on the 27th of August, and I heard, as you said, Murray, certainly there was hope, I think, for those people who were pro 50-50, and I also did hear quite clearly those people who, you know, would prefer not to have a targeted rate to pay for this. I guess what I wanted to explore, because I note that there's nothing in this particular paper or the paper that went to Ops Committee, and I'm not sure if this is the right place for this question, but I do feel like I need to go down this track because I've followed this in my 5-year tenure as an elected member, is there's no discussion or comment in here, and maybe it muddies it in regards to the health and safety of the people living on that road and the impact of the dust, and whether, you know, like where we as council sit with liability for that under the Health Act, perhaps. And I just wondered, Dan, if you or Hamish, if either of you had any comment on that?
Madam Mayor, my comment would be, in one of the papers, I think it was November last year,
Yeah.
I do refer to that. But I don't talk about where our liabilities lie, because the work that was done around the Ministry of Health and NZTA was done up in the far north, and it was done on logging routes. And what NZTA have come up, and I can only assume, well, it was in agreement with the Ministry of Health, the criterion that they used to decide whether or not they would support funding of a dust suppression is they look at the number of traffic movements on any road, they look at the type of vehicles that are on the road, and they look at the proximity of any houses to the road. So they use those, and then you essentially put your information into a calculator, and it would then tell you whether or not they meet the threshold of whether or not there's any health indications that you need to be concerned about. None of our roads actually trigger that calculator to say there is enough of those things going on that means that NZTA would subsidise it. So we've got that going on, but what it does say is where you get, from memory, it's a 50% of the trigger, then that would require further investigation. And some roads that we do have do trigger that, would require investigation. So if we relate back to the health, Ministry of Health and NZTA have made an agreement that it needs to trigger these things for it to achieve a subsidy. Because none of our roads do, we haven't progressed any further.
And I think, you know, at the Ops meeting, which was November last year, you know, there was that, I think the suite of information was in the agenda around the health and the qualification, I guess, of the triggers. So I think that, you know, it would be unfair for us to say we hadn't considered it. It was there and it was, yeah, but we have.
I guess I was just wanting to put it on the table in relation to this particular decision, given that we have the links to those and I have reviewed them, but for anybody looking at this documentation, it felt to me like it, you know, it wasn't transparent here, but yeah, I absolutely understand and I have reviewed. That's why I was just wanting to be transparent for our constituents, to be honest.
And actually at the operations meeting, sorry Dave, I'll come to you in a minute, operations meeting last week, whilst we didn't actually refer to those previous reports, we talked about the issue of acceptance of dust being an issue without the qualifications that Dan's considered as well. Thank you, Dave.
Before I go on to what I was wanting to talk about, just to pour into the dust, it has no relevance to me at all because we live in rural Aranui. There's dust everywhere, and that if those people on Maskell's Road wanted to mitigate dust, like I want to mitigate dust, so I don't have to clean my car, drive at 30k. Right, so collectively they could all drive at 30k and somehow enforce everyone else, and then they wouldn't have a dust problem. So move on from the dust. So dust to me turns me off because it's not a problem.
With all due respect, I'll disagree with the councillor.
I drive at 30k and it won't be a problem.
Thanks, Dave. I'll hear your comments now. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting you talk about gone round as funding from debt, which makes sense to me as a way of doing it if it's a development. Any business propositions, if you do any development, you don't try and pay for it out of the groceries. So my question is, if we're very disciplined and for the debt component of what we've got, how can we make sure we ring fence that as a loan or whatever, that we pay that actually back in 10 years' time? So there's a lot of council debt just seems to get lost in a big pool. But if it's a development, and I call this development, this is not maintenance. So how can we assure it gets, is there a new mechanism that we can have, like we do that for amenities and medical centres? That we target, I know there's a targeted rate, but for the council component of it, we actually pay it back, because Hamish did work out, it was $5 per ratepayer for this per year, and if another kilometre happens somewhere else, be another $5. But how can we be disciplined that we actually pay it back? What mechanisms have we got? So we actually, because if I borrow something for development, I don't pay for it out of the groceries, but I pay it back in a 10 or 15 year period. And that's where we're going wrong. If we're not paying it back, I agree with Vince, we can't have more debt. We need to be able to pay it back.
So just ask, Hamish, you pick up the points that Dave's raising as far as the debt payback over a 10-year period, ring fence.
So no council debt is in a pool, it's all allocated to a project. Every bit of debt is allocated to projects, and where there's targeted rates applied, those targeted rates are for applying the debt back, and if there's a rate applied to ratepayers to pay that debt back, that money is used to pay that debt back. So there doesn't need to be any special mechanism. The mechanism's there already, we utilised already for every existing bit of debt that we have. You see a report on that, and you'll see it again in the financial reports, where that debt sits, what it's been spent on, and so there's no problem with paying it back. The problem is that you're going to put a rate on every ratepayer in the district to pay back the ratepayer's share, as well as a targeted rate on those people on the road to pay their share plus the interest on the whole thing. So I don't see any problem at all. The debt is very focused, and there is a very focused mechanism that you can apply to pay it back, which is a targeted rate on those residents plus a targeted rate for everybody else in the district. Pay the other share.
Jason.
Oh, sorry, Jason.
Gary, just to
sorry,
expand on that, we've been quite mindful of the overall debt relating to roading over a number of years, because we did use it as a balancing mechanism to get work done, but to stagger the repayment of that over time. And last for the 23-24 year, we specifically in the annual plan had $900,000 debt repayment included in the roading rate. So we'll continue that mechanism as we move forward.
So are you happy with that as a response, so that things can
That's what I thought was the answer.
Yeah, great, thank you. I mean, it's good to tease these out, because actually then we've got the confidence go on. So I think Gary, you had a question, and then sure, Gary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to, I guess, speak to the subject, and in doing so, voice my support for the decision that the Operations Committee made in the position that it got to, and bringing it to the table now. So I guess, if you like, I'm speaking from a councillor viewpoint in support of the proposal of the debt funding, and majority 75% support. For me, without going into the background and repeating excessively, but there's history here. There is growth on that road that was not foreseen in terms of the subdivision. There are discussions by concerned residents with council, roading manager in particular, of 10 years ago, which gave them what we could say in today's language might be false hope, but there were commitments made. It has shaped their mindset. The amount of traffic on the road, with respect to Councillor Hislop, is a dust issue. in parts of that road, whether that's the topography of the road, the proximity of houses, whatever, the nature of the dust itself. I have walked that road numerous times. I've watched the dust, I've measured, I've counted the minutes it takes for the dust to dissipate after a single car. And it is a dust issue. I won't go further than that in my personal view, and I know that's the view of the residents. I support the debt funding approach. I support the approach that we actually discussed here as part of the LTP considerations in response to the submissions, where we actually talked that the Mascalls Road initiative, should it proceed, might in fact be an initiative from a development perspective that we look at on an annual basis for the future over the LTP period, because there are other parts of this district which are also growing. So I look at Mascalls Road not as a one-off, but it's potentially a signal or a practical example that we can learn from, including the debt funding, including going to the open market, which I think, as Dan has outlined, is a great idea. I think it may serve a longer purpose as well. So I fully support the 50-50, the debt funded approach with the majority. There is some debate in the community, the affected community, around the word 75, the number of 75. Personally, I wouldn't support trying to go to 85, because I think that puts a stretch on everything. I think the workshop that was in here was broadly 75% in support. They'll have more detail before they do the final sign up based on whatever the quote is. We'll have better numbers that they can grasp. And I think we stay with that 75% approach that came out of the operations committee meeting. That's where I stand on it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. It's important that we hear every side of the story. Thank you, Tom.
If there is any further development in that road, will those new properties also be subject to the targeted rate?
Madam Mayor, yes, they can be. There's a decision for you today. So there are some further proposed developments on that road.
And that would be made clear to those developers and potential purchasers that they will be subject to a targeted rate for the sealing of the road.
Well, Madam Mayor, we could certainly do that. I mean, some of those developments are pretty far down the road now, so this will come, probably they're not engaged in this process, so it might come as a shock to them, but yeah, they'll certainly be told.
And secondly, is this going to set a precedent to other rural residents who live on unmade roads, in them wanting to be treated similarly and go for a 50-50 split?
Well, Madam Mayor, that's a difficult one to answer. Yes, it can do, but equally, no, not necessarily. Councils, sometimes will steer away from their own policy to make a one-off decision, and it doesn't set precedent. But certainly, there has been. We've received pressure in the past to seal other roads, and we've always maintained that it's 100% funded by the applicant. So there may well be other people on other roads that are watching this process with interest.
But the reality is that unless we change the policy would remain at 100% funded, and it would have to be considered on a case-by-case situation. So I'm relatively confident that without changing the policy, we've got, our baseline position is this. But there is no certainty about what could come through a decision that wavers from the current policy. That's an unknown aspect, I guess. And we all know that, notwithstanding the policy, but actually we know that we have got a significant demand on our roading budget today, as much as our ability or our willingness to support growth or support the constituents in that, and that's the tension. That's why, this is a paper that I've really struggled with, and probably the most internal struggle in my time sitting around this table, to be fair. Yep. Did you, sorry, hand up, thank you, Vince.
I could not vote for this. I just listening to Dan, we're 5K a year behind on resealing now. So in the length of the debt, we're going to be 50K behind, you know, which is a fair stretch of road. You know, how many K is it here to Colton? You know, it's, you don't think about it, and there's a lot of pressure on our ratepayers. You might say, oh, it's only $5, but we've got a lot of $5 going on a lot of things. And we've got a lot of single income people that are on fixed incomes, and it just becomes more and more. And I think, and I look at the cost per ratepayer on that road at 2,500. I think you'd have to go for an 80% at least. People agree with it, because it's a big increase on their rates on just one hit. You know, you won't just put yourself in it and think you open your rates bill and there's another $2,500 on it. You know, what would you say? You know, and just think about that. And I think the council, the tail's been wagging the dog here a bit. You know, we went out to them and said, no, we're not paying for it. They came back and said, you're paying for all of it, some of them. And then they said, oh, 50-50. I wouldn't say that we're going to pay for 50% of it. I think 60, you know, they pay 60, we're 40 at the minimum. That's me. And there's a reason, there's a policy. And, you know, I just think, and just keep thinking about our debt. We've been lucky in the last year or so, we haven't had any events which we're on our roading network, and the debt we've got, we're busy paying back, was just trying to catch up on what we hadn't done. So we're going to have, we'll just all get real and realise that we're going to have to do a catch up one day on a lot of stuff. You know, when you drive our roading network and you look, there's a lot of faults that we're going to have to fix one day. And it's just going to get worse, you know, and I have to agree with the staff on this one.
You know, Vince, I don't disagree with the 80% or 85% even, because I've, as I said, I've rankled with this and I've thought about it since last week's meeting actually. And I just wonder whether if the threshold, you know, I guess we'll understand the costings, what the full costings are, and if it was 80 or 85%, if there's fewer people up that road, affected parties that aren't in support, I think we're going to get, it's going to, you know, it's not, they're going to be completely disappointed with us if we have a lower threshold. So I've kind of wavered a little bit, I guess, on the 75% that came through from operations to actually increase that threshold so that more people agree with the position and less people are in disagreement of it. I think that might be really helpful to get this in a more favourable position. So increase that 80% or 85% threshold up, get more people agreeing with the position. I think is probably an important position for us to take. But that's, we need to just continue to tease this out. So thank you, Pauline.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I'm not going to repeat what Councillor Jackson said, but I actually share his position on this. And I have grappled with it like you, Madam Mayor. In regards to increasing the threshold, currently there are 24 properties, 75% of that is a nice tidy round 18. If we increase it to 80%, then we're talking about 19.2 properties. Increase it to 85%, 20.4. It muddies the water for me. So I share Councillor Jackson's viewpoint. And in regards to the, you know, the increase in rates, I absolutely feel that. However, I think the willingness that I heard at that meeting of these residents to meet us halfway is important, and for that increased rate, there will be an increased value to properties because they will no longer be on a gravel road. So all of those properties up there will reap the benefits of that in the long term. So that's my position presently.
I guess if we applied that argument in its purest form, policy might stand as well, you know, because their property values would increase. So, you know, like, and that's the tension of
It is.
flicking over back and forward. So.
And like you, Murray, I've grappled with this and I really did consider precedent because I can think of at least one other road that is of a similar nature. But I take some comfort in the fact that our policy is in place. And we're always told it is there to direct officers. But I take comfort in the fact that we can look at things on a case-by-case basis. And this one here is historical. And, you know, Councillor Jackson's outlined that history far back, further than my tenure here. So, yeah, it's difficult. But.
Now we're starting to tease out the questions. I'm going to go to Karen and then I'm going to go to Tom. I'm not sure if to give me either. So, Karen and then Tom.
Thanks, Mayor. I think mine's just a question of clarification. You talked about maybe 75 moving to 85%. I'm just wanting to double check. If I'm one of those, only one of the 24 properties and I've said no, I don't want to agree with this. If we voted for this today, am I still obliged to pay my percentage? Right. Okay, yes. So all we're saying is that if, I think you said 18 of the 24 people said, yes, we're in agreement, then that puts that obligation on all properties, even though some folk, a portion of people have said, I can't afford this.
Correct.
And the other thing is, if I'm just in the process of buying a property, for instance, it's being subject to subdivision, then that is in train, how would this council, or can this council impose that, given that it's a process that's partway through? I just wasn't sure how that would work. So, like, one of those 24 is being subdivided and I'm trying to buy, say, a third of it or whatever. Can we retrospectively impose this on people who are just in that process still?
Well, Madam Mayor, yes, we can. Yeah. So once they become a property in their own right, then they will receive that on their rates. So it will be apportioned out based on whatever's left in that pot, so to speak.
So that would reduce the overall amount per person.
If that's what you decided to do.
Or the amount of time the rate's proposed for.
Yeah.
Right, so it might reduce the tenure.
And it wouldn't be retrospective, it would be from the next rating round.
Right, which is the 1st of July or?
Yeah, 1st of July each year.
So what we decide now isn't going to come into effect until the next financial year.
Correct.
Right. But when would the ceiling happen? In this financial year or next financial year?
Well, Madam Mayor, I think I've got the paper that says nothing will happen until July, purely for financial reasons, because it's not included in the budget.
Okay, I didn't get that. Thank you.
So the reality is that it potentially can capture new ratepayers on that road, and the financial impact will start July 1, 2025 in the new rating round, I think. Is that clear? Yeah.
And further to that, Madam Mayor, if other pieces of land develop and subdivide, then at whatever point that they get to, that pot of money will then be distributed wider.
Right. But there's no option to keep the amount the same for everybody and reduce the debt for the general rates.
You can decide that.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to go to, I'll just think about that one, Karen, so it makes it clear. Come back if you need to. If I go to Tom and then Dave.
Yeah, I've just reminded myself of the affirmation as well, that we make appropriate decisions for the benefit of Hurunui district at large. And I am struggling with the thought that every single ratepayer will have to contribute $5 for the benefit of 24 ratepayers in one road. And I feel that the 13,000 ratepayers all contributing to one single road, I feel a little bit inequitable, particularly as has been pointed out, those properties will increase significantly in value as a result of this work. So the ratepayers at large will not largely benefit from this as well.
Thanks.
Just while I'm thinking of covering off on Tom's, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 50 years ago, I contributed, the ratepayers in Hurunui contributed to the road into Hammer Springs from taking up from Middle to Tarsdale or whatever. So, well, that's a state highway, sorry, but any roads. So this is development. This is development, this is not. So we've all contributed in the past to Vince's tar seal outside his house. We've all contributed.
I don't think you've been to.
I'm probably in there because he's been here 20 years ago.
It's got no tar seal. It's got no tar seal.
You better check your.
To a golf course, sorry. There is a true and tried method with main power and utility power lines where they will put a power line in, and when existing new people come in, of how you pay or whatever to cover. So it's not so utility, a road is a utility. So I'm sure Dan will come up with the same sort of thing. If I want to join a power line that's been established in the past, that they have a mechanism of what I pay. And in effect, if I've contributed something in the past, I actually have to pay from a developer coming in. I have to pay to myself who's already contributed that. Main power do it with power lines. I'm not going to 80%. You know, it's probably fine to me because that's going to be the governing factor. If you go on any road, like if we use Gimmel's Road in Harden, someone else put to me, oh, well, I want to tar seal it tomorrow. Yeah, there's three or four houses on that road. They're going to have to contribute 50% of it. I don't think so. They're not going to. So it's Barker's Road, I've used that as an example in Waimak. They've had the 50-50 for a long period of time. They've got 1.2 kilometre people on that road. They can't get it over the 70, I think it's 75% of the people. So there's a handbrake saying, you know, unless you, so it's got to be fairly high. Barker's Road, not Baker's Road. And that's $13,000 per household.
Ross.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, I'll listen to everybody and look, you know, Dave's rebuttal on Tom, I agree with, you know, we've all contributed historically to roads. No matter where they are, we haven't said, oh, I'm not going to fund that one because there's only 2 people on it. And we know lately over the last year how we funded roads with not many people on it. And look, you'll never find a way of doing it that's going to be totally fair. Otherwise, we would have found it and it would be in place. So that's the challenge we have. And I'm probably guilty here because at one of the LTP things, I did say that my preferred thing was, you know, about a 50-50 funding of this road rather than 100%. And it probably got taken up and it probably will. But I do feel, you know, look, you know, I hear you, Vince, and I hear all the other things, but I'd like to set it at 75%. And if it doesn't go through, well, it doesn't go through, but I'd like to stick with that. The 25% that aren't paying, they will get a benefit from it. And like anywhere, if you don't like it, you sell up and move on. You know, I know it's hard to say, and it's not easy to do, but that's really anywhere that you live, but you have that option. If you don't like it where you are, if your neighbours are crap neighbours, then you move on. That's not a good argument in this case, sure, but I just want a wee bit of clarity on the fact that if the new people that come in on that road and buy property, you say there's potentially a mechanism that not only they would be charged a rate for their 50%, but I'd like to see if there's a possibility that I don't know whether you call it a development contribution or whatever, but there's a way that them buying that new property, that some of the council debt in relation to that, and that's what Karen was getting, could come down. I'd like to see that somehow there's a mechanism there that people know when they're buying that we're not only paying off that 50%, but there's also a reduction in the council side. And then if they don't want to buy, they don't. But that's sort of what happens in the real development world of it. You're already paying for it, and when you buy the property, you're paying for that road to be sealed in that development. You're paying for all that infrastructure, and it's already there. So that's sort of what I'd like to see happen in this case. So look, I hear everyone, and as we've said, it was easy. We would have done it by now. We would have moved on. But I'd like to move the motion as it came through from the operations committee. They're all written there on number 2. And it was just with whether we need to have clear that with further development on the road, that it's clear that they would be subject to the targeted rate. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it, and I'd be prepared to move that that recommendation as it came through from the ops, with that clarity on sticking at 75%. And that it's clear that development subject to the targeted rate. And if I just finish for 1 cup of coffee a year, it's going to cost me to pay for the sealing of that road for 10 years. I'm more than happy to do that for that people. And if there's other people come in, but as Dave says, the float gates don't get open. Historically, they haven't opened. There's still that financial restriction there that will stop people doing it. But I'm more than happy to pay. And I'd actually think that most of the people in our rural community, and I'm speaking from the rural side because that's what I'm familiar with, would be happy with that. Because somewhere down the track, there might be the potential for a road that has a similar amount of people on that can get to the stage and go outside of policy here, that it might be their chance to get a seal. Because, as Dave's always said, we need development. We have it in the urban environment, but we don't have it in the rural environment. On rural ways, there's nothing there to help them. We need progress, and to be honest, for a lot of people, that is all they see as progress, is a sealed road. So look, I would like to move that.
Can you just hold there for a minute, because I'm not sure. I'd much rather hear this now.
Yeah, I've listened to the discussion and I just wanted to make a point of clarification, which is that whatever percentage you nominate, if that percentage of residents agrees, therefore the rate will be imposed on all residents that live on that road. Yeah. So if you don't agree, it's imposed. Yeah. So there's no free ride on this. Yeah.
So the threshold is really.
So I'm not making a point about the threshold. I'm just saying that whatever the threshold is, the rate will be imposed on 100% of the properties on that road.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So,
just if I can, just timely to emphasising the point that the Chief Executive has made, in response to someone who says, I'm now forced to pay that rate because I'm in the 25%, not the 75. There are two things that we can respond with in terms of our contribution to the growing and the betterment of that road. The first is that we are doing it on a 3 tender basis, which guarantees we're doing it at the very best possible price. That's the first point. And the second point is that they still get the benefit long term in terms of the value of their property.
Actually, maybe I'll go to Dan and then I'll come to you, Vince. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, just to make one point clear, it'll be an open tender.
I understand.
Yeah, so not 3 specifically, because some tenders we don't get 3 people tendering.
Understood.
We'll go onto the open market and whatever the open market will dictate.
And typically we'd be looking for the best price for the desirable outcome anyway. So,
Well,
yeah, you know,
yeah, among
that's
other things.
a given. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. Vince, you've got a comment.
Just a question on the rate. So the people on the road that are paying the, whatever you're talking about percentage, are going to pay the district-wide debt rate as well? Yeah, so they say they'll be actually going to be a bit higher than so pay the debt, where the rest of the district will have as well, they'll be paying a percentage of that.
They'll be paying their $5 as well as the CapEx and interest. Can I just get clarity? So they'll be paying, so total cost is this amount divided by 24 ratepayers, plus interest impact on that capital expenditure. And those 24 ratepayers will also be paying the $5, the same as what we will be.
Yeah, but just for clarity,
Yeah.
I mean, $5 was the number that I came
Yeah,
up
I
with.
know. Okay. It was like additional cost. Yeah, okay.
We won't get into
Yeah, okay.
To complicate it further,
Yeah.
because it's a road rate, it's charged based on capital value, so there'd be
More than
if some ratepayers pay,
Oh, you got
particularly.
hey.
Someday.
Okay, so just listening to, just to try and iron out our understanding, there is the capital expenditure with the price of the 1.2 kilometres of road, plus interest over a 10-year period for those 24 ratepayers, and the rest of ratepayers will pay whatever the percentage difference is until, yeah, and that is based on capital value of the property. So it could be a little bit up or a little bit down. I'm not going to put a dollar on it. Okay, is my understanding clear? Have I spelled it out what we're talking about? And that's on a 75% 50-50 threshold of whatever the open market procurement tells us this road is going to cost. It feels, I mean, I came into this discussion preferring an increase of that threshold, to be fair, above 75%. And I guess just another point, and we've clarified some of the situation. I don't hold too much, credible is not quite the right word I'm looking for, but I'll use it anyway. We were promised this 10 years ago and it's never achieved. That doesn't sit well and it doesn't sit comfortably for me, because, you know, that's on an assumption of some dialogue that somebody had with somebody else 10 years ago or thereabouts. So for me, I have, when I've weighed up the situation, I have placed little or no weighting to that assumption of dialogue. And I think it's important that we factor all of these situations in. Karen, thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to pick up on a point I think Vince made earlier about, I understand the 75% would have to agree. I'm not wanting to talk about that so much, but I feel like the people, the 24 ratepayers are going to get a longer term benefit in terms of the value of their properties going up. So for me, I don't feel comfortable with 50-50. I think that the ratepayers should pay 60%. And I also think that the remaining district ratepayers should pay maximum 40%, and that any additional ratepayers that come into that road after, like through subdivision or whatever, where additional rates, if you like, are struck along that road, then those rates should go against the district and reduce the district debt more rapidly. So that the people pay what the people pay because they're getting benefit, 60%, 24 properties, and that's how I think the balance should be paid, so that the people who get the least benefit, which is all the rest of us as ratepayers, have our debt reduced as fast as possible and only face a maximum of 40%. That's more my comfort level.
Oh, Graham's looking at me sideways.
I'm just gonna say, we've got a motion.
Yeah, well, we haven't, I'm kind of waiting for a bit more clarity, but I do know that Ross is, like I said, I'm just from a process point of view, if this making an assumption that Councillor Barnes is looking at, as written on page 61, number 2, coming from the Operations Committee, if that didn't happen to get an agreed status, can we then go, is it completely different that we get another motion at the 60/40 or whatever? Is that sufficiently different enough to trigger another emotion?
Oh, Madam Mayor.
Just trying to cover my bases before I get there.
As I often advise you, I think there would be a matter of discretion as chair. You could argue that it is a different motion because the percentage is key staff.
Yeah.
I think chair's discretion.
Okay, I'd happily use that discretion if I needed to, or not. Yeah, but we've had some different ideas that have come through, and so I just going to go around the room for any, see if there's any final comments from down here. Vince, are you okay, Pauline?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Tom.
I'm very much in favour of the principle that any additional ratepayers that come in doesn't mean that the liability to the existing ratepayers goes down. I think it should go against our debt, our 50% share, rather than against their 50% share, or whatever share we're agreed.
You might need to factor that in.
Yeah.
Come to you.
Because are we going to need quite a bit of detail in this?
Yeah.
To cover all our bases. I think that's, look, I think you've both got valid points, and I hear you 60/40, and I hear you as well, Tom. I keep it simple. I'm really still comfortable with my 50/50. But I would more be inclined to go with any more development that it comes off, or is it too complicated? I'm shit at maths anyway. Can it come off the total half of each lot? Is that a doable way, or are we? I'm all for simple.
I guess
I don't want it to be too complicated. It's like if there's more development, it's clear cut and it's easy to work out. It comes off. If it can come off both the council share and their share, to me that I'll be comfortable with that in this motion. Answer?
Yeah, I don't think it can be as simple as that. The whole there is a significant section of the Local Government Act that relates to this type of required to offer lump sum contributions, so it can't be purely an increase in everybody's rates. If they don't want to pay the interest component, we've got to give them that option according to, and there's a lot of processes you have to go through. You've got to have a full funding a full capital plan and a funding plan associated with that. So I suppose if you gave us direction to go and explore what we can and can't do, rather than I prefer that, that just gives them a
Yeah.
chance to review
Yeah,
all the
keeps-
requirements with their
Yeah.
level of.
Yeah, or through the chair, the easiest way then is, my understanding is for any new developments then, the easiest way to work that out financially is for that to come off their share. Totally, rather than a mixed pool, that's what you're saying.
But yeah, any way that you're progressing, yeah, I'd just like a little bit of time to be able to address all the little issues around it, because I don't want to get caught up
Yeah.
in not being able to charge a rate because we missed a step.
So, like, just to try and put that into some sort of layman's language, then I'm just wondering whether, rather than tying ourselves up with a recommendation that has come through from operations, that we instruct officers to consider the rating impact for a 50-50 share model. I'm making an assumption there, spread over 10 years, and to also consider any new development and how that would be funding.
And
There's probably better words for that, yeah, and ask, so if then Jason or whoever can consider what the rating impact and what we can do, then we can firm that proposal up at the next meeting. I know that's stretching it a bit further, but it feels like we're getting some sort of intent. If it's, I'm still hearing some 50-50, 60-40, you know, but the intent of that is probably what we need to understand without having a negative rating impact in the.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
To give direction to
Yeah.
staff and then to come back to see how that actually plays out.
And to draw down that debt for all of the ratepayers as opposed to the 24, you know, that's the sort of scenario I think that I'm hearing. Does that make sense to you, Jason? That's good.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, Dave, I think, yeah.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I think the key point in terms of the motion that's being talked about is that the motion includes the statement that the rate will apply to all new rateable units that are developed, that the use of that money and how it's best applied is still being developed.
So
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I just don't think we should miss the fact that we're covering not only the existing ratepayers, but new ratepayers as well. Because that will actually help sell the story, because they will understand that future development will actually help the whole thing going forward. Sorry, thank you.
Now I'm just kind of get round, Dave, and I want to come back and get a recommendation, so you can.
Hoping Graham's got something.
Yeah, okay.
I think Gary's pretty well covered it. I didn't want it to be left lying. I think we want to make a decision on the percentage and this, 50-50, 75 or 80. And then the future will be dictated to by what Jason and local government says we need to do. And that's the direction, isn't it? Is that what we want to get to?
Yeah, I think we need to just take it sort of one step at a time without getting us. I think the intent of this discussion is to perhaps consider going forward with this against the recommendation of sticking to policy. I think that's what I'm hearing, but that's not without some due consideration as well. And it's just how we're going, the detail around that is what we need to kind of better understand. Yeah. Is that such a, Carol, I just want to be comfortable with that? Yeah. Yeah. Graham, have you got anywhere near how that might frame up as a recommendation? No pressure, 15 years into service.
Madam Mayor, just before I scupper what Graham's about to say, in the report there's a bullet point in there, number 5. And number 5 is we've received some obviously legal advice around this whole matter. And one of the things that they want us to be cognizant of is that we are deviating from policy. And council has also got to make a decision as to whether or not they consider it a requirement that the special consultative procedures are required or not. So we just need, I mean, ideally it would be in the resolution, but I see that's getting quite tricky. But at least a statement that are in the minutes to say why we've done that, because if we get to the annual report, then, or the annual plan, then the audit system will know.
I think we could probably do that once we get some feedback from Jason maybe as to what we're able to do, or and we could consider or get a recommendation of our reasons for being inconsistent with the policy, and we would need to take some guidance, I guess, as if it's a significant departure from the LTP.
It's a significant departure from policy, but financially, it's not a matter of significance, the LTP. But remember that you just approved your policies as part of the long-term plan process.
Yeah. But it wouldn't trigger a need to go out to consider policy, a deviation from the policy under the LTP?
No, so long as you're not changing that policy, but it is a significant departure from your policy.
Yeah.
And it does call into question your policy.
Yeah. I
And
understand.
your policy was approved as part of your long-term plan.
Yeah.
And I probably don't have to remind you that we've seen a council who has made some significant departures already, and it's not being viewed favourably. So the safest route, of course, would be to go through that special consultative procedure. With respect to the policy, I don't think we need to go through it for the financial decision. For the policy, I think that would be the safest route. Or at least have a complete review of the policy in light of the decision that you've made, and if you decide to stick to your policy, then obviously you don't need to go through that process.
Okay, so either of those pathways, I'm comfortable with either of those pathways. If the policy comes back for a review and it's upheld in its current wording, well, that will be the decision of this council. If it decides to change that, well, you know, that will be in our future as well. I guess if it triggers a special consultative process, it allows all of the ratepayers actually in our district, or would it be, how does that work? Is it? It would inform, or I should say, all of the ratepayers of their cost.
No, because if you've already made the financial decision, you can't resolve from that based on the ECP. The ECP would be, say, ratepayers, we've made this decision about this one, we're looking to change our policy. This is the likely impacts of that change of policy. What do you think? You have a good example to show them what the impacts would be.
Is it your advice that we consider those and get recommendations? If we get this first recommendation first, that we should do this now, or is that better? Would that be best practice to come back when the information comes back from Jason, maybe at the next meeting?
So as an officer of council, my advice is to follow policy. But if you're making a decision not to follow policy, then it's up to you which way you want to handle it.
So I'm going to come back and look at the first recommendation first, and then I'm going to be in your hands as to I want you to consider that we're looking particularly around number 5A and B in your paper on page 61. Okay. So you have your hand up.
I just wanted to speak a bit on what Ham said, because in the ops meeting, there was a couple of things here that really helped me, and that was that it meets the council's strategic objection of our objectives. The legal and policy implications were not significant. There wasn't a significant alteration or a significant stretch of road. So that I think it's across those bridges then that they weren't significant, so it didn't need to go further up the chain or out the chain, whatever. So I sort of now don't want to muddy the waters again by thinking that we might have to. This is a one-off, we're not changing the policy and it's not significant enough to open a can of worms, so that's my layman speak, so. Yeah, I don't want to let that muddy the waters by thinking, oh shit, we're gonna have to change something else or it's gonna go out of conversation. My understanding is we don't need to, it's been looked at, we've had advice. It's not a significant stretch of road and it's not a significant operation. That's what I'm reading before. So that's so can we go to back to Graham and have clarity on what we're that's
And actually, I'm happy to defer that decision, if that be the case, depending on what this resolution wording is and what we're asking Jason, or getting better clarity on how it could be targeted and what it might trigger. I would quite like that to be wrapped up into that resolution, so we can then consider that in its entirety, what are the net effects of a decision that we're about to be making. So, sorry, Graham, have you got some wording that might consider to provide direction to officers as an outcome of this discussion around sealing of Maskell's Road?
Mainly what I got was that the council instructs officers to consider the rating impact of a 50-50 share model with residents via a target rate consisting of the capital cost plus interest accrued spread over 10 years, and if 75% of the properties are in agreement. Then consider how any new rateable units on the road would contribute to the cost of the sealing and management of the debt repayment. Might have been more to it, sorry.
Was the first thing here about the 50-50?
Yeah. That's the idea.
Yeah, so we're essentially I've included the recommendation from the operations committee.
I just wonder if we're confusing things. Is it simply the resolution that councillor Barnes put, almost as it's written as two, and then a second resolution in regards to the rating, rather than try and put it all into one?
I think what we're trying to clarify with the intent of that as written is that what is the implication going to be, or what are the options that we've got, Jason's going to provide back to us. So I think without the intent of it is to consider here outside of policy, but what are the ways that we can go about it, I think is what Jason's going to come back, and rather than locking us into a particular way. Maybe forward.
I feel like we're trying to come to an understanding about yes or no, and then the rating is separate.
I think what
a separate kind of consideration.
Yeah. I think what I heard from Jason was that if we locked ourselves too much into the wording of the recommendation, that we didn't know, well, we need to double check what the implications of that might be, that we need to have quite a broad statement that then we can tie it down once we get the rest of get the understanding of what we can and can't do. I know that it's getting really confusing here, but
yeah, I think the resolution just lacks clarity.
Yeah,
perhaps that's where I'm getting to.
Do you want to hear it again?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's hear it again. Sorry, Graham.
That's okay. That the council instruct officers to consider the rating impact of a 50-50 share model with residents for a targeted rate consisting of the capital cost plus interest accrued spread over 10 years, and if 75% of properties are in agreement. And consider how any new rateable units on the road would contribute to the cost of the sealing and the management of debt repayment. So I guess there'll be also minutes to have the discussion about the various options and questions that customers raise, which officers will feed into their.
So it talks about 50-50. It talks about 75% threshold, it talks about new developments being tied into that. It talks about the 10-year period of payback. What else was that, you know, and the consideration, I guess, of actually how it's going to be developed. We haven't talked about policy or special consulting process. That's something separate.
Madam Mayor, just the first 4 words.
The council instruct officers.
Instruct officers, yeah.
So what we're doing with this discussion is giving and putting the, I guess, the instructing Jason particularly probably in a financial impact, how that is best going to be structured as of probably July 1, 2025, and you know, for those current 24 ratepayers, any future potential new ratepayers, and the future debt impact on the rest of us as ratepayers. I think that's what we're wanting to find out from Jason, and this recommendation with the intent in the minutes is saying these are the impacts we want to understand, and then we'll put that, tie that down, I guess, when this comes back at the next meeting.
Yeah, so like, Madam Mayor, I'm comfortable with that, with my limited English skills. I'm not reading anything between the lines that we're saying that we're not meant to be saying, or vice versa. So I'm comfortable with that, and I'll hear from you.
I'm just kind of being pedantic, apologies, Madam Mayor. Over and above the words you've got there, Grant, is that we put in there that to proceed, or whatever the words were, on an open tender basis. I'd just like to be pedantic and have that in there.
Well, that would be it. We're only in best practice anyway, aren't we? That's an officer. That's an officer.
So, Madam Chair, we follow council procurement policy when we're doing e-procurement.
Yeah.
And the engineer's estimate of the size of this job would suggest that we have to follow a tender process.
But do we do, through the chair, do we do that in roading today, where we have a principal contractor? Do we get open tender on all jobs?
Well, Madam Mayor, no, not on all jobs, but I mean, I understand the intent is that we go out to the open market, so that I have no other expectations. I'll do anything different.
And equally, but I would, and that's why I used the word pedantic, because again, people will read this and
I think it will be picked up in the minutes, so Gary, you know, I think that we've got the intent of this recommendation is to understand the impact of the 24 ratepayers, any future new ratepayers, and the rest of us as ratepayers that are actually going to manage this large portion, if it's 50-50. And I think the intent of the discussion is how can we make sure that the rest of us as ratepayers who are funding this or supporting the funding of this are going to get drawn down at the earliest possible time frame. That's kind of like in layman's language, I think that's what I'm hearing from you. And that's the intent of this recommendation, is for Jason to find that out under the Act and come back with you can do this, but you can't do that, you can do this, and you will achieve that. That's kind of what I'm expecting. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Jason, does that make sense to you? And you've got some good discussion that'll support that. Okay, so we do have a mover. And we've heard it twice. So are we all happy? You're happy to second that? Anybody, you understand the intent of this discussion, and I know it's been testy and it's, you know, we're all struggling with it. We have a move in the second. Does anybody like to speak for or against that motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll just briefly speak for it, because it's been a long time to get here, and I really appreciate everybody's honesty and the good discussion we've had, and respect everybody's point of view on this. And thank you for that. So it's my speaking for it.
Anybody else? Okay.
Well, I'll speak against, because my worry is we're not maintaining what we've got. So how can you have more of something when you can't even look after what you've got? That's all I ask, and if you guys give me a quick answer of how you're gonna get that extra 5K of reseal every year, to just keep what we've got going. I'll be happy. And, that's why I'm against it, because of just the funding side. And, you know, it's not good. Management and governance.
Okay, anybody else? I'm going to put that motion. Do you all understand what it is? All in agreement to the motion as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? That motion's carried.
Councillor, I'd like to vote on.
Thank you. Okay, Jason, I know you're always a really busy man, but is bringing back that information that we're kind of seeking of what we can do under the Act as far as a rating, is that something that is able to be brought back next month, or is that going to be, you know, like what's our timing wise?
Yeah, I don't mean, I should never promise anything because I get caught out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Especially with the auditors turning up today, but it's just a matter of going through, systematically going through the relevant components of the Local Government Act and the Local Government Rating Act, and perhaps just getting some clarification from our legal advisors as well. I'd be confident that I'd be able to provide it for next meeting.
Okay, okay. And councillors, in consideration to the inconsistency around the, inconsistency around the policy and the significant departure from the LTP, I would like those to come through in the paper next month as well, because that would, for me, I need to understand what we can do with the resolution that we've just agreed to, but actually what those implications might be around, you know, looking at putting it onto the policy review or whatever that might be. I want to understand the timeframes around that as well. Okay, so I guess Dan, you'll be bringing, that will be something that you'll bring back as a paper, or Jason, I don't know, whatever.
We'll work it out.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, you wanted to say something.
Oh, just in like any good quote, Madam Mayor, the engineer's estimate, I want to protect the officers here, that they came up with this 675 to 700,000, well over 6 months ago now.
Yeah.
The world is quite different from where it was back then. So whilst I believe that that's actually quite conservative and it's based off of our schedule rates that haven't changed overly too much, but it's also based on some experience of jobs. So I don't want to be nailed to the mast on those numbers, because we are going through an open tender.
Yeah, 100%.
Hopefully it'll be significantly less.
And I mean, the things that I've thought about that I'll just throw into the mixer now so we understand when our papers come back, but you know, a lot of discussion today is talked about new development or new people coming in. You know, I want to be certain if this continues to progress in its current desire, how do we make sure that information goes onto a limb, so that if anybody new comes in and is wanting to you know, purchase the said property, that it's clearly spelled out that there is a targeted rate for the next 10 years or 7 years or whatever point time. So, you know, we need to make sure that we've got no surprises approach to any future development or further changes that might happen to that goes up that road. So can we make sure that those things are as watertight as we can?
Madam Mayor, yeah, we'll have a look when Joseph's doing all of his work around the target rate. We'll work out where we store that information and how we share it.
Yeah, because for me, I think that's really important, because you know the comments have been made. This was promised 10 years ago or whatever. You know, that actually we need to be certain that we've learned some lessons around that, and if a targeted rate set on these properties, if they were looking at purchasing, if I was looking at purchasing a property, I can see that there's you know, $2,000 for the next 10 years on that to contribute to the road ceiling, because it'll be done and dusted by then, and I'm like, why? Yeah.
Whilst we're doing all this extra work to bring it to the next meeting, is it possible that we can actually have a look at that figure again of 675 to 700,000 in light of it being 6 months old? Because if that figure came back at say 1.2 million, then the voting may be, you know, if we could, you know, just ballpark figure, how realistic is that? So that we're not shocked that suddenly it's blown out of the water because it's astronomically more expensive.
Okay. No final comments? Councillors, thanks very much for that discussion. I knew it was going to take us a wee bit of time. I'm, you know, like the rest of you, this has been an internal wrangle for me for a while about doing the best we can. But I totally understand and I totally respect, Vince, your comments about the honesty and integrity around that. And I just want it noted around that, because we've all been charged with the discipline, but you, I totally respect that today, and I thank you for those comments, because you know that sometimes we just need to have a bit of a stone in our shoe, and you know, and you know, and I think that's really important that we've had that discussion today. So let's see if we can make some progress. It's 12:28. Alan, I know we were scheduled to have you about, you know, 3/4 an hour ago or something like that. And we do have a presentation due at 1 PM. So if I'm allowed to say, how long do you think your presentation would take? And we could give you 10 minutes now, or we could break, but it would have to come after our presentation at 1 o'clock. So I'm not sure what your time commitments are like for the rest of the day. Apologies.
I'm anticipating less than 5 minutes to present. It will depend on questions from here. So I'm sure I'll stick within a 10-minute window. I can shoot you now, or I can come back out.
Have you had other time pressures? That's the more probably, you know, if okay, so it might be, rather than, I mean, I think it's really important, the topic that you're, you know, providing us information on, so I don't want to cut you short either. So how about we ask you to come back about, the deputation, we're given 10 minutes and 5 questions. Yeah, okay, so perhaps about 1:15, and we'll be trying really hard to be disciplined and stick to that. Al, is that okay?
Absolutely fine. Yeah.
Good on you. Thank you, Alan. We will break for lunch now. That I think we need to just have a wee bit of time to have some lunch together. And councillors, I'll just remind you to be back here by 1 PM so we can start with our deputation. Thank you. Welcome back, councillors, and warm welcome to Amberley Beach residents and ratepayers, represented by Paula, John and Mark. You're no stranger to this table, but it's always nice to have you here. And
hot seat again, aren't
thank
we?
you. Well, I don't think so. I think, yeah. But it's great to have you with us again today. And just for councillors' information as much as anything, you'll note in your agenda 7.1 is the Amberley Beach Fund. And I know that I negotiated with Alan Greg as far as the civil defence, but so what I'm going to do is we'll listen to Paula, Mark and John. They have their usual 10 minutes and 5 minutes for questions of clarity. And then we're going to go immediately into Hamish's paper on page 76, which is the Amberley Beach Fund. And then we will go back to our agenda items, civil defence as a discussion item with Alan, and then our financial report, which Jason will take us through, and that will get us through our open agenda items for the remainder of the day. You're comfortable with that? Thank you. So the floor is yours. You're going to lead us, Mark, or how's that going to happen? Or
I'm actually just going to introduce you to Paula, because Paula's actually done all the work, and I was actually I wasn't attending until this morning. So, but we've collaborated together in the past couple of weeks, and so Paula's going to speak on our behalf. So,
okay.
Floor's.
That's great. So Paula, you've got 10 minutes, you've got 5 minutes for questions. I know that you're aware that Pauline and Vanessa met with Hamish and I a while back, and you've had some feedback around that. But yep, happy to, our time is your time for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for scheduling us to start with. Spoken briefly around that timing of that, that's great. Just want to acknowledge John, who's here. He's not a speaker, he's a worker. He's the technical expert and the drawer of what's going on with our fund, and has worked closely with the council and Monique in her role, especially with the coastal adaptation plan, but more recently getting down to the nitty-gritty of how this rebuild will happen, and working very, very closely with ReadyMix, because they've had quite a change in personnel since the last time, and so getting them to grips and the understanding of scale and complexity of what we're undertaking has taken a little bit longer than we would have planned. And the matter that was passed earlier about this slipping through into this financial year is somewhat driven by some of that as well. So thank you for passing that this figure sits now in the financial year. The cost for our project, of course, is driven a little bit by its location, and we haven't gone out to the market for tender, because for anyone else to bring material considerable distance to the site would blow it out considerably. And I think when we find the final figure and what's tabled and what's going to be spent is very much taking into mind that the location of ReadyMix is right there. We have an existing haul road, as we refer to it, that allows the material to come across the Myer property and right down to where the bund rebuild will be, and it starts at that end closest to the culvert on what's known as Golf Links Road, and then works its way south as we get a structure in place to protect those 109 households that are based down there, whether they're a mix of rental, owner occupied, or holiday homes. So that's basically why we were here today. We're at the end of a long process to get to here. I think John will be very pleased to put this to rest and watch the rest of the machinery move across. The council will be at peace that we're not nagging at the door anymore. Pauline and Vanessa will feel very vindicated from their work coming down to the meetings and hearing some of the community stress a little bit about, is this ever going to happen? We've sort of preempted it with the community, saying we will have good news for this year, and so the business case that's being presented later today, the timing of that was, I'd hope that it almost happened before we were here to answer any questions that may come from it, but we believe there's no surprises now. It's a project go, green light. And so that's really all we have to say, is we've got a community that's very happy to see this happening, but the community is not just the beach. If you've been down there at the weekend and seen how many people were up on the car park, walking along what remains of the bund, we're fishing and wetsuits even, just at the Golf Culvert area, you would understand it's a huge part of the Amberley community, let alone the Hiranui. And there was other streams of work that will flow from this. I'm not going into those today. Today's about what's happening with this rebuild. So the floor is yours to ask us any questions you may have about where we're at in this process or what's happened to date.
Great, thanks Paula for that succinct, I guess, update on where things are at, and we really appreciate, there's nothing better than hearing it for ourselves as a team. And just for your information, we've got 3 councillors away today, one on leave and 2 weren't able to be with us today, so just for your information. It's no consideration your statement, Paula, about the importance of our beach communities. We've got several beach communities that actually are a real you know, cultural subset almost of New Zealand Inc., you know, and they are an important part of who we are and how we function as a district. So with those few words from me, I guess we'll just open it up and see if there's any questions from councillors, and then we can just carry on depending on where that's going to sit. So I'll just start with Ross. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I haven't been down there for a while. The last time I was down there, one of our things were being quite eroded, next to the seat that was there. Has it taken any more? I haven't heard of any high seas lately, but has it taken more?
It's definitely deteriorated.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for the last 3 years, the erosion's been minimal. I keep a check on the profiles down there, and it seems to go in cycles, 3 to 4 years where you get no storms, and then you start getting the submersion, 6 to 7 metre storms coming in.
And they true it.
Yeah. I think last time was in 2020-21, where we had over 2 years, we actually had 6 to 7 big storms came in, and they most of the damage down. So I think this is what the fund is about, is getting in place and also putting in like a reef in the front to negate the waves actually undercut.
So
I
understand
think that's where
that
the bulk of the expenditures has gone into actually getting this thing underway, and in some sense, there's a sense of trial and risk about this whole thing. In 2018, we actually put dug a trench along the front, and that actually worked until it was undermined, and that said structure actually.
So the rebuild is slightly bigger in the base, slightly wider, so to encounter for all the experience we're now gaining about what happens down there.
Thanks, Ross, for that question. Any other questions? Karen, anything from up this way? When you make a start, how long does it take for the renourishment to be completed? Is it a month, or is it how long is it going to take?
Yeah, I think with projections, it's going to be about 35 working days.
Right.
And in times past, that can be disrupted by several factors, you know, like sometimes work commitments taken away. Really play a major thing down there, so you get a storm coming. But it'll take about 35 days, I'd say. We'll be pretty clear about that. Yeah.
This is a large contract for them. They're actually hiring in machinery as part of the factory as well to do it. So yeah.
I think we're interested in the actual. Are we able to know how much has a contract been written up here? Can we address
the answer questions, or we?
Yeah, no, you're asking a question of us. I don't
Actually, yes, is this the right time to do it, or?
Yeah. I think it'll be addressed.
Yeah, I thought it was actually.
Yeah, I think it's talked about. Okay, so how about because then it'll be in our formal proceedings. So I guess what, if we've heard your presentation, we generally allow questions of inquiry. If there's no further questions of inquiry from the minds of councillors, I'm just happy to leave it there, and we'll continue with that, and we'll receive this information paper on the Amberley Beach Fund. So
can I just sum up then? We're very much handing over now. We've done everything we can. We're now in the hands of, well, we'd say Jason, Dan and Hamish to be driving this. We are owning the community that reside there. We're paying a levy, and we've increased our levy. We understand there is 342k already built up between the two funds available to us towards this cost. And we're now sitting back waiting to see the council's action side of this to happen. So in summary, that's where we're at from our point of view. John's role will be to assist Ready Mix going forward, but we're actually handing over now.
Yeah, that's right. Understand the levy that you're talking about, or the targeted rate. It's also really important to get that whole picture that the debt for the remainder sits, you know, as a responsibility of all of us as council. So just, you know, it's important that we all understand the whole picture as it stands. So with that, thank you. You're happy to sit back in the gallery while we continue with our agenda items for today, but thanks very much for your time today. Radio councillors, as I said before, we're receiving item 7.1, which is the Amberley Beach Fund report. Hamish, this is your paper, so perhaps if you take us through this paper, and we will consider that as we normally do. Thank you.
Yeah, so as noted, you know, the purpose of this report is to keep you informed of progress on the contract for the new beach fund. Obviously, we sought and were granted consent in March 23 for the development of the new fund as part of our Coastal Communities project, and it was 100% funded by council. At the 30th April 24 meeting, council agreed in principle to make debt funding available to ensure the fund could be built, and this has been subsequently incorporated into the long-term plan. The beach community, largely John, has designed the fund to replace the existing structure and work with ECAN to ensure that will comply. That design has been peer reviewed and approved in late August 24. In September 24, we met with the contractor for this rebuild and discussed scope and terms of engagement. Terms of engagement were agreed in October. So we have an agreement, signed agreement with the contractor. I just note there that the design included an optional extension of the bund to the north of the existing culvert, and that component's not included under the current agreement with the contractor. So I know point 6 there that the contractor has programmed a site survey with a view to starting construction in November. John's just told me that the contractor has been down there doing that site survey. So we believe it's on target to start in November and be completed by Christmas. Right. So that's the update.
Thank you, Hamish, for that. And I guess we will follow this with interest, you know. And I'll just check in with councillors. This is an information paper that we will receive, but if there's any questions to clarify in your minds, the information that you've either read in prep for today or the information that you've heard. Any questions? Thanks, Karen.
Yes, just wondering if the cost has been confirmed.
So what we've got is essentially day rates for the kit that's moving the material there, and tonnage costs. So that's what the contract is made up of. Based on the original drawings that we had, we confirmed that we could do it within the budget that we had. But I haven't had a look at the later set of drawings, but we'll be talking with the contractor again to make sure that's still the case.
Thanks, Karen. Any questions around the table? Thank you, Pauline.
Thanks, Hamish, and thank you for the update. I know that the entire beach community will be thrilled to hear what you've updated with. Just following on from Karen's question in regards to the costs and the budget, is there a necessity for the council, given that we approved in principle funding, is there a necessity for council to approve the budgeted amount, or are we good to go with the budget that was set, which was the 750?
My understanding is that it was approved as part of the long-term plan process.
Okay, so we don't need to look at the specifics. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I just want, I mean, I think it's important to note under the significant and engagement assessment, you know, the best intent is that we have the renourished fund or the new fund structure that will provide certainty in that coastal marine environment. But, you know, we have this investment, we're putting this investment in place with the very best intent, and we have an expectation that we're going to be rewarded for that investment over a 10 or so period. But, you know, when I read that assessment, you know, that's something that we actually can't have or don't have any guarantee or any control over. So I just think it's important that we understand that, and I'm sure the residents in the beach community have a greater understanding again to those of us that don't live in that environment. But it is you know, the risk does remain, doesn't it? So thank you, Vince.
Hamish, will we get an update on how it's all going with the next meeting? Or how long do you expect it to take?
I expect it to be finished by Christmas at this stage, but if there's any change to that, I can let you know.
Yeah, no, it's just keeping us in the loop.
Right. Good, councillors. If there's any more questions to clarify in your mind the intent of this information paper, if you were satisfied, if there's someone willing to move that we receive that. Thank you, Karen. Do I have a second for that? Thank you, Pauline. All in agreement that we receive the information paper on Amberley Beach Fund, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? That motion is carried. Thanks very much. Thank you, Hamish. Thank you for your morning or afternoon's work. Appreciate it. Ellen, welcome. Apologies for changing you around a wee bit, but it's really important that we do dedicate some time to your paper. Emergency management is really important, and it's good for us to keep an overview of the work that you're doing in our community in that preparedness space, I guess, you know, in a world of uncertainty. You know, we've just talked about renourishing the under, you know, sea swells, but, you know, there's a whole lot of other factors that goes into that as well. So we appreciate what you're doing, and if you just want to take us through this paper, that'd be appreciated.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, you'll all note from the agenda there was a emergency management update. I'll take the update itself as read, although I'd like to take some time to highlight some of the areas in there. The first of those is point number 3. The response capability we develop here in the Hiranui district is primarily divided into 2 separate areas. One of those is Emergency Operations Centre staff, what we call an EOC. That's the coordination facility that we run here from the council. The role of that coordination facility is to coordinate all response agencies across the district during a time of emergency. The other one of those is the Community Emergency Response Teams, or CERTs as we call them. There's one of those for each of the 9 sectors we have in our district. The reason we have 9 of those teams is to allow for disasters that might separate some of our communities and have them in isolation. So each of those teams trained to be relatively autonomous in what they do for their local communities, and their purpose is simply to coordinate disaster response activity in their local area and report back to the Emergency Operations Centre. So the Emergency Operations Centre staff, most of these staff train monthly for several hours per month, and then they also do an exercise in July, what we call a stop-go exercise, which is where we present them with a scenario. They work through exactly how they would try and deal with that particular scenario. Then we stop, look at how they're achieving, look at any problems that are developing, any areas where they're unsure, and then we resolve those issues and get them practicing some more, hence the stop-go nature of that particular exercise. Another exercise that ran just recently was Exercise Shakeout, and I'd like to express my thank you to this council for the work they did with the video with Laura, doing the drop cover hold underneath the tables and doing the evacuation. Thank you very much for supporting that and showing our staff that the right way to do things. Let you support what it is that they're doing. So that Exercise Shakeout was a national exercise drill that happens every year. They actually register people to participate in that exercise. This year, there are over 660,000 people registered to participate in Exercise Shakeout. So that happened last week. It went very, very well. And we used the time while the staff were out evacuated and waiting for the building inspectors to practice a building evaluation. they're actually talked to about their own personal preparedness, because personal preparedness for all of us, including the people around this table, is an incredibly important part of being ready for disasters. Our emergency operations centre staff, our council staff, without being personally prepared at home, will not be able to respond anywhere near as quickly and effectively and work in an emergency operations centre if their home situations are not okay. So that was a great chance to reinforce that. Another update, Exercise Pandora, which is the annual regional Canterbury exercise. It occurs next week on the 7th of November. This year it's the Tier 3 exercise, which means the entire region will be exercising. So there will be 9 emergency operations centres activated across Canterbury, plus the Emergency Coordination Centre, which is the regional level coordination centre, will also activate an exercise for a full day. We've also got Nelson, Tasman, Marlborough and West Coast also activating to work on this. The scenario for this particular exercise is an Alpine fault earthquake. Now, they've been very ambitious. We're working towards starting this exercise in day 3 of the response to an Alpine fault earthquake. So this is quite different. It's quite a departure from our normal, where we start from the impact time of an emergency. But we believe there will be some real benefits to starting in the middle of a disaster. So it's going to be a very, very interesting day. If any of you would like to come along and observe at any stage through that exercise, please contact me and we'll organise a good time for you to come in and observe what's happening within that exercise. So the exercise itself will run from 9 till 4 o'clock on Thursday, the 7th of November, and we'll run 2 shifts with them executing a changeover period during the lunch break. So there'll be a morning shift and an afternoon shift with a switch over time to help them practice switching shifts without. The challenge with changing shifts is that the efficiency and effectiveness of an emergency operations centre dips down while they're changing over. So we need to practice those changeovers to try and have that emergency operations centre functioning as smoothly as possible throughout a changeover. So it should be a very interesting day. It gives us, the purpose of that exercise is to let the staff actually practice dealing with a big event. We'll have a lot of simulators to try and simulate as much reality as we can. No exercise is as real as the real thing, but it's as close as we can possibly get. The intent for this exercise is for the staff to come out there having practiced what they know, having come to a better understanding of what it is they don't know or things that they need to improve. The last training session in November for each of those teams in the Emergency Operations Centre will be focused on how this year's training went, how the exercising went, and what we need to look at next year to get better and better at what we do. So that's Exercise Pandora. The Community Emergency Response Teams, the CERTs, they've been doing a huge amount of work this year. A lot of training has been going on, and they've also been getting involved in some of the community activities that have been happening in their areas. For example, the tsunami siren testing that we ran in October at Daylight Savings. The Amberley team and originally some of the Waipara team were going to come down and help with that. So they're an important part of that tsunami siren testing because they're the reassurance to the community on the day that when those sirens sound, that it is under control, that it is a test, and that they don't need to be too worried about that. So you'll see there, I won't go through all of the different teams. There is a bit of an outline of what each team has been up to, and in the appendix you'll see my subjective take on the position of each of those community emergency response teams and where they're at in the cycle of readiness to respond to an emergency event. Gets Ready, which is a community database currently run by the Neighbourhood Support. There is one operating for North Canterbury, Gets Ready North Canterbury, and this council recently agreed to put some money towards that. Myself and my manager and councillor will be working with Selwyn District Council next week to look at how they apply that Gets Ready initiative to their emergency response. The reason we're looking at Selwyn is they started their Gets Ready program over 10 years ago. They, from what I understand, have managed to meld the Gets Ready database, neighbourhood support, and their community civil defence areas all into one functioning organisation. So when an emergency happens, all of those people connected into Gets Ready are actually part of that information gathering stage and overall coordination. So we want to look at exactly how they've managed to do that. They've had the advantage of having a full-time person running just that element of emergency management at their council for over 10 years. That person who's running it is due to retire, hence the reason we're approaching her now to get as much of her knowledge and experience as we can before she retires. So we're certainly open to any way in which we can better prepare our communities. I'd also like to talk about Canterbury C10. It's called C10. C10 stands for Canterbury 10, the 10 councils of Canterbury. It's a regional initiative to try and give us more effectiveness in our emergency operations centres. It's been noted over the years of responses that we've had that even one or two highly expert, highly trained, highly experienced staff coming into an emergency operations centre could make a huge difference to how that emergency operations centre acted. So 6 or 7 years ago, we started an initiative to train people to a higher level and have them organised so that when an emergency operations centre anywhere in Canterbury activated, we had a group, a pool of more highly trained staff who could come in to help that emergency operations centre. Another reason behind the driver for this initiative was it was noted a lot of people that do come in to help during a disaster, well, they're not always as effective as they could be. So this was a chance to also try and vet, if you like, the people coming in to help during a disaster. So in the 7 or 8 years that this initiative has been running, it's gone from strength to strength. It's now a very well regarded initiative. In fact, it's nationally recognised, and the National Emergency Management Assistance Team, which is a national version of that, came along to some of our training to look at ideas for how they could develop the national model. So it's become a real jewel in the crown of Canterbury emergency management, to the point where the Canterbury Regional Civil Defence Controller touts the C10 initiative as one of the highlights of his career in terms of how well it has developed. So I'm talking about this because we just ran our 5th 5-day residential training course at the end of September, start of October, and we put another 26 people through that training program. So the C10 initiative gives us just over 50 trained staff ready at a moment's notice to go and help another council. While the initiative is aimed primarily at helping Canterbury councils during disaster events and responses, C10 has also gone to West Coast, Otago, Marlborough, Nelson, Tasman, and up into the areas hit by Gabrielle and the Auckland flooding as well. And the feedback we've had from the staff that week has been absolutely amazing. People have been so thankful and appreciative for the efforts and the work, the experience that they've brought. So just wanted to make sure that you're aware of C10 and its success. That's pretty much all I have to say there. I'm more than happy to take any questions through the chair about any elements of that or anything that I have not covered off. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. I really appreciate what you do to get those cert teams, you know, and keep them motivated, I guess, you know, because and often it's in those sort of silent times where we get a wee bit complacent, and, you know, keeping everybody motivated to be, it really is really important, so I really appreciate that. Questions from councillors for Alan in regard to his report? Thanks, Ross.
Mayor, just a wee one, Alan, just regarding, well, we had quite a few false clears earlier on, and, well, the Aurora, which results from false clears. So is there any planning, and if we lose all our comms from solar flares, of going back to Stone Age communication? That we can go back to if we do lose our modern technology of it with them?
Yes, no immediate answers to that, but space weather, which is what you're referring to, has become an emerging hazard that more and more time is being put into in terms of civil defence emergency management, and our scientists who advise us. Just earlier this year, we had a big forum about space weather. There's 4 key types of space weather that might affect the way we live here on Earth. We're still coming up with the solutions to some of those problems, but we're becoming more and more aware of just how dangerous that solar weather, or the space weather as it's called, can be. It could take out all of our communications. potentially electricity grids at a national level and create all sorts of havoc for us because we are so reliant on electricity, software, communications. So we're all celebrating the fact that satellite communications is becoming more and more readily available to not just organisations but to private people. So to lose that could become really damaging to us. So we are looking now at exactly, before we can come up with the solutions, we need to look at exactly what those issues are, how they will affect us, and then start to work on solutions for that. Until such time, we will have to rely on the, as you say, the Stone Age solutions, heliograph, smoke signals, and so forth.
Yeah. Get you some pigeons.
It's not just the pigeons.
Thank you.
It's your fundraising effort.
And if I could just add through the chair, money and resources being put aside now to look very seriously at space weather. It's been mooted for a number of years, but not really taken seriously. But in the last 2 years, space weather is fast becoming one of the key priorities.
Right. Any further questions? Just a comment really, it's the we were both at the zone meeting in Dunedin last week, and we had a presentation from Dan Neely.
He's from
from Wellington, and he talked a lot about the importance of CERT teams and the roles that they have, but community emergencies hubs, and every one of those hubs needs a supervisor, someone that needs and offers someone to do communication, information, coordination, and reception. You know, like he stripped it right down to basic titles. So it's a cardboard box, a plastic box. In the time of emergency, we can all, even without a lot of training, we can put on those hats and be that person until different supports come. But in communities, we need to learn to step up and actually look after ourselves at time of emergency for the immediate time frame anyway. So yeah, interesting.
And if I can speak to that, Madam Mayor, that Wellington initiative, what they call community hubs, has been undertaken by Waimakariri District Council Civil Defence. They are instituting the community hub model in their council throughout their district. We're also looking to take on that hub model in a modified way that will work for our community. We've created several of those plastic boxes, copied off the WIMAC stuff, which copied off the Wellington stuff. And we're looking to identify some of our communities to start that initiative in. Want to emphasise, we still believe in the value of our community emergency response teams. Their role is to coordinate a whole area. Community hub is really designed to allow self-led, community-led response to an emergency. And that's really important because 80% of the assistance and rescues that happen across the globe during disasters is done by the community, bystanders, neighbours, family, helping each other. 15% of that comes from emergency services and other everyday organisations. The last 5% comes from specialist units. So 80% of the people assisted during disasters is done by people in the community. And that's why we invest so much in that.
Yes, he talked about his friend who was in the fire in White, isn't it? And, there wasn't a team coming in 3 days or 5 days or however long. So the community response was actually, he had a photograph where, people had brought in boxes, and it reminded me of going to Waio in those early days, when huge amount of gifting of clothing and food and whatever, but people were just there planning and saying, these were nappies are here, food's here, whatever's over here, so we just do those things as a response to, and how important it is that, your community needs to look after itself in that planning phase, because in that example of the Hawaii fire, it was, a long time before emergency teams could get in and actually help and do some of that sort of specialised coordinating. So, it's beholden on all of us to be there to do that community response stuff. Yeah, so interesting. Okey-dokey. Well, I think that we've explored your questions in regard to your report, Ellen. Once again, I just want to thank you for what you do to keep that motivation high, keep that information being shared amongst our community. And with that, I'm happy to move that we receive this information. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. They took a while. Yeah, that's right, exactly. All in agreement, we received that information, please say aye. Those against, that's carrying. Thanks very much, Alan. Appreciate it. Radio councillors, we've now got our financial report. Jason will take us through these pages. And just by way of timing, we do have in public excluded, we've got Graham coming in at 2 p.m. But I just need to consider 8.3. You know, what's the most time that they can attend? So it's 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
She said to come in.
Okay, so we might take,
I can do that report.
yeah, okay, I thought, yeah. Anyway, so we'll progress as much as we can until we hit those time frames, but welcome, Jason, thanks for that, and you want to just take us through the financial papers, that'd be appreciated.
Thanks, and yeah, so this was the financial report for the first 3 months of the financial year. And I'll just go through it as we normally do, concentrating on the year-to-date figures first of all. So page 81 is the council as a whole. To date, we've received a total of 15.6 million. Our budget was 14.8 million, so up on budget for the period of time. And then the expenditure, total expenditure is about 16.5 million. Our budget for the time of the year was almost 18 million, so we're down on the expenditure, and then capital expenditure there, total of 3.6 million has been spent. Budget for the first 3 months was 3.5, so just ahead of our capital program. And then obviously we break it down into the individual groups of activities. So page 82 is water supplies. And just the variants are recorded there. We've got a little bit of additional income that we've recorded relating to some damage that was done to the network that we've charged Chorus for. And the cost of that actually was in the previous financial year, so will be a permanent difference for this year. And then the other key variances are that we're just down on the operating expenditure, just mainly through some timing variances, particularly compliance testing. And our total interest, internal interest paid is just up on what we budgeted for. And again, that's a result of two items. The level of debt's a bit higher than what we had predicted, but also the interest that we've charged for the first 3 months of the year was higher than the average that we had budgeted to charge for the full year. I'll explain that when we get to the report. The capital expenditure there, again, just slightly ahead of our budget for the first 3 months. A couple of compensating variances. Page 83 is just a group activity for the Three Waters stimulus / transition, and we have still received funding for the transition work that's been undertaken, and that's gone to meet some of the employment costs that we've incurred in developing some of the new options. Page 84 is Silver Ridge and
Jason, just back on page 82, point 6 in the notes. Balance of internal debt is 42.8 compared with the budget of 38.3.
Yes.
Which would sort of imply, in my ignorant thinking, that our capital expenditure must be up higher, but then when I look at the line, the very bottom line, capital expenditure year to date is 1.471 versus 1.428. So
yeah,
what am I missing?
We're missing the development contribution balances that we've got for water and the same for sewer that need to be transferred against the district water account. So that will be done. You can see that we're up on the balance, the internal interest received, and almost to compensate the corresponding increase on the for the internal interest paid. So the two balance out, but they just need to be applied to the right account.
I need to learn to be an accountant.
So similarly, the same issue here with the level of funding we've got sitting in the development contributions account, and when it offsets against the debt for sewer, it's as we had budgeted for, it's just not quite, it's not aligned at this stage, and it's something we'll rectify before I provide the next set of financials. We are down on development contributions for the month, for the first 3 months, and it just reflects the level of development. And expenditure, similarly, we've got a number of timing variances. The note 4, where we had budgeted to spend set amount over the first 3 months of the year, and that hasn't been incurred to date, but expected to be before the end of the year. And page 85 is stormwater. We do have, we are coding the stormwater connection fees that we charge on subdivisions directly to this account, whereas in our budget that was accounted for as part of the corporate services, so part of the Three Waters team. So we're applying it to where it should be applied. But yeah, there's an increase here, but there'll be a decrease in the corporate services area. Our overall expenditure is down on what we've budgeted for. In our capital expenditure, there is this work being undertaken constantly, so we're close to budget for that. Page 86 is the group activity for roads and footpaths, and immediately go to the next page, which is page 87 for specifically for roading. And the variances, the key variance is really just in operating expenditure, and it's just again, it tends to be for roading. We haven't spent quite as much in operating costs for the first 3 months, but that will be spent by the end of the year. And both for convenience sake and the authorised capital expenditure there is matched against our budget. And we move through and get some confirmation on what, as Dan was talking about, through operations, what our roading budget is expected to be for the remainder of the year. We can pinpoint the calendarisation correctly at that point. Page 88 is roadside construction, and again, we're just general footpath maintenance, just under budget for the first 3 months. And but expected to be expended before the end of the year. And non-coastal hazards, and for your next version of this, we'll have the 750,000 carried forward for the capital expenditure for the foreshore protection.
So we're going to check through here,
That's
it's
right.
over there, short term of that.
Yeah, and we're budgeting for it to be completed by the end of before Christmas. So,
yeah,
the calendarisation of that will be November and December.
Yeah, okay. Everybody keep an eye on that as well. Yeah, thank you.
Page 90 is the group activity for public services, and then that's broken down into the individual activities. The first one on page 91 being community services. We have additional income, and again, it's relates to the grant monies that we've received last year and carry forward into this year, and between Brad and Ria provided that breakdown of those grants there.
I really like the way you've got that little table there and the funder as well. Jason, I think that's quite good for clarity because we will need a wee reminder of that external funding process, so thank you.
And you can see, yeah, the expenditure against that as well, just to show,
yeah.
Yeah, there will be more and more money coming against that, and that may be ahead of what we've have budgeted for in expenditure. Page 92 is property. We're up on income budget because we received funding from Better Off for the soldiers block, but I think Surya had mentioned that I think we've made the final claim from the Better Off, so there'll still be a little bit more to come through in October. And that is obviously going to offset or to fund part of the soldiers block redevelopment. There's a number of timing variances within our operating expenditure. And again, we're expecting to spend those over the remaining 3 quarters of the year. And our capital expenditure is largely on budget. Reserves. And there is the variance identified. Again, there's a number of variances in our operating expenditure, just and it is purely timing. One break we do that as and then required rather than it's an amount every month.
Jason. I don't want to nickel and dime it, but the note number 4, unbudgeted capex ceiling entranceway to the Henmer Cemetery. Was that just something we didn't put in the budget, or was it a damage issue that was created that we didn't expect?
No, it was allowed for in year 2 of the budget of the long-term plan, but undertaken early.
Okay.
Yeah. So it had specifically been budgeted for. It's just not in this financial year, but it was work that was still to be done at that time.
If I may, Jason, actually looking at the sale of Campbell Street, 25 grand, is that capex, is that the cost to get the valuation and or any legal fees?
No, so there's a negative amount, that is actually the sales proceeds that we received, so we just put it against capital expenditure. It's negative capital expenditure. There has been costs involved with that, but the sale of the property is 25,000.
Yeah.
It was actually 17 and a half plus just.
Yeah.
But there were other costs that the purchaser was up for.
Yeah, okay, that's clear. Thank you.
Emergency services, no significant variances to date. The library, we are down on development contributions, and that's just a reflection of the amount of developments in the last 3 months. Waste minimisation on page 96. Petrol station charges are up on budget, but sales slightly down on budget, and development contributions because we're receiving contributions now for the eventual expansion of the transfer station at Amberley, and it's just as we've seen all the way through, development contributions are just lower than what we budgeted for the first 3 months. And operating expenditure, there we do have, again, a number of variances which are expected to be timing variances. Regulatory services on page 97. broken it through resource management and planning. And we are down on income, but also down on both staff expenditure and other operating expenditure. Then page 99 is compliance and other regulatory functions, and we are up on buildings and seed income by about 60,000 for the year to date. But there has been some additional wage and contractors costs involved. It's been offset by that additional income. Thermal polls and star on page 100. And Ramsey and may talk about that further. Just the first 3 months of the year, we were expecting to have a profit of about 387,000. Page 101 is group activity for governance and corporate, and then that's broken down to governance on page 102, and no significant variances for the first 3 months of the year. The treasury account, and there are variances here, and it's all centered around the amount of internal interest both received and paid. Rates penalties over budget for 46,000, and obviously our external interest is slightly higher than what we had budgeted for. And again, our budget was based on an average for the full year, the first 3 months, the interest rates were slightly higher than what's transpired. For corporate account, largely on budget for the first 3 months. And then finally, the earthquake recovery account, and grants we received slightly above what we had budgeted for, and our expenditure is generally on budget. And then page 106 to 109 is the full breakdown of capital expenditure. So each of those items we break it down to the individual projects that were undertaken. Match that against their budget. Financial report, the next component of the overall financial report is the rate and arrears report. Page 110, and as at the end of September 2024, there was $1.25 million owing in rates. Same point this time last year was 1.45 million. So it's about 13% decrease. So it's still going the right way, but there is still $1.25 million.
Yeah, and it's good that it's dropped.
So rates have been struck for the second quarter, and will have gone out from the usual payment on the 20th, generally on payment on November.
It probably doesn't relate specifically to that page, but the rate remission policy or relief for adverse, yes. The drought conditions. I've got a Reduce Events Committee meeting tonight, because I think that the declaration is still probably about a month away, maybe of review, so that the application for whatever the name of that policy is, sorry, only holds principle while that declaration is in place, is that correct?
You know,
Just-
we do allow it for a period after, I think in the policy, it's 12 months after the lifting of the declaration, so that
okay.
gives, gives people an opportunity to,
Yeah.
if there are, because obviously
Yeah,
the effects might not be felt right
No.
now, will be down the track.
no, yeah, okay, so that's.
So I think we specifically built in that would extend after the lifting of the.
Yeah, okay, I may come up in tonight's meeting, but I'll just keep my eyes on that one just in case. Thank you.
Okay, and the final part of the financial treasury account. And then we've got the next page. Three. The key component always refer back to is on this second page, the all up weighted average cost of funds, including margin, because that dictates a number of other processes. It's dropped to 4.91%. It was at 5.01% at the end of August, so that does reflect the dropping of the interest rates. And the listing of that here, listing of the interest rate swaps are provided here, as well as a graph that shows where we're sitting as far as our overall cost of funds compared to the 90-day bank bill rate and the official cash rate. And the official cash rate actually was reduced to 4.75% earlier in October. The next review is the end of November, and many commentators are predicting a further drop of another 0.5%. The official, the 90-day bank bill rate back in September was 4.87. When I wrote this, it was 4.59. When it was 4.53. So gradual. There was a significant drop, and it's continuing going lower. The key component of that, our external cost of funds is on top of page 80 when we reset our internal interest rates at the end of each quarter. So as that had dropped to 4.91%, our internal interest rate will be 5.91% for our activities, or 6.91% for and then the 3-month term deposit rate can remain at 4.2%. So any activities that hold funds will receive 2% interest. And finally, is the internal debt, and I've emailed it through, but I've handed it around and thanks Councillor Daly that I had the 32 lines, so one for the G with $8,000 in, and the sheet one being the district-wide combined stormwater should have a debt of 3.2 million. So stormwater will be overall the debt will be 3.2 million. So page 119 is always the key one I look at, where the biggest amount of debt sits. So we've got the thermal poles with almost 16 million. We've got hold a debt of 43.5 million. So we're holds a debt of 10.5 million in 3.25.
Thanks, Jason. We'll through that and we'll step by step, so we appreciate that. Councillors, do you have any other questions to clarify in your mind what we've seen already? Thank you, Gary. Gary's happy to remove the receipt of this information from the second. Okay, that's fine. So moved and seconded by Karen. Thanks, Jason, again. All in agreement, that please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Karen, thank you. Thank you, sorry.
That's all right. You'll see that there's several areas where we are under budget currently. And we're making efforts to make those savings improvements. There's a lot of effort going on right throughout our operational areas to make those savings permanent. Some of them are related to levels of service, and obviously we have to deliver the levels of service. But there are areas where the team's been working away pretty assiduously, looking for savings, very small savings, but taking those and looking to pocket those savings so that we do come in under budget for the year. So despite the fact that some people think that that we don't look for savings, we do. We look at them all the time. In fact, if you read the operations minutes, we actually identify the savings that we're making in those minutes. You know, I mean, things happen during the year, and sometimes these savings can't be made, but we're working to try and solidify those savings into total savings for the year.
Great. Thanks for the comment, and that's really appreciated. Where some of that consideration actually comes to fruition, so thank you. Councillors, I think that takes us through our open agenda. I'm mindful that you will have read your public excluded section in your agenda, and the matters for consideration meet that threshold of seeking a resolution to consider that be in PE. So with that in mind, is there someone willing to move us into? Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Pauline. All in agreement that we go into public excluded, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. Thank you.